It's not by accident the hills and the mountains are protected. And it's not by accident the city today is one of the most desirable cities.
Our forefathers and foremothers had the foresight to see the value of protecting our natural lands and having that open space buffer.
Chautauqua itself was really founded in 1898, so Chautauqua has been a part of Boulder for a very long time. In fact, the buying of the Batchelder Ranch, which is where Chautauqua is today, was funded by the very first bond issue that the citizens of Boulder voted for.
Citizens decided that they're going to protect that and grow smart. And growing smart means we're going to grow compactly. So they shaped the characteristics of the city early on.
Boulder's changed a lot since 1964. It was a fairly sleepy little town. There was no Pearl Street Mall, of course. There was little funky Pearl Street and a 5 and 10 cent store on the corner of Broadway and Pearl, and a couple of restaurants, but nothing like Frasca.
I think people said we wanted to have a well-defined community, but also what does it look like as you go up? And some people don't realize that the height limit is based on the tallest cottonwood tree that you would see. So the 55 feet is about the height of your mature cottonwood tree.
I think the open space program really reflected in the fact citizens voted to tax themselves was really an amazing milestone. And it's often forgotten the 1 cent tax for open space also included funding for transportation. Of the two things that Boulder is most known for now, one is our open space program, and that we have made such a compact city surrounded by nature, but also our transportation innovations, our bike paths, our circulator bus system. And those things are in part paid for with that original 1 cent sales tax that the citizens of Boulder put into place in 1968.
We've been working with Boulder County since the 1970s to develop the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan as a statement about our vision for our community's future and what we want to preserve about the things that are great, and also how we respond to the new challenges that we're facing.
The hope for the future of Boulder, it's really continuing the legacy that we've had here, that the community engagement that we've had, the people who have cared so much about this community have always made decisions about its livability. It's just such a fabulous place. It's so important for us to take good care of it.
Food. It nourishes, brings us together, and adds flavor to life. That's why it's important to wash hands, surfaces, and fresh produce. Keep raw meat, poultry, and seafood separate from ready-to-eat foods like fruits and vegetables. And cook to proper temperatures using a food thermometer. Enjoy! And refrigerate leftovers within 2 hours. For more tips on safely preparing foods, visit homefoodsafety.org.
Lynette, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Puckett.
Present.
Friend. Here. Joseph.
Here.
Nagel. Sweatlick.
Here.
Wallach.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yates.
Here.
Young.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great. So sign-ups for open comment are closed, as they always are, at 6 p.m. Tonight, we will have 2 public hearings, second reading of Ordinance 8366, adopting building codes, international building codes, and second reading of Ordinance 8376 related to tobacco sales and vaping. If you want to speak at either one of those public hearings, you're welcome to sign up at the clerk's table. And at open comment, you can comment on any subject except for those 2 public hearings. So it is that time of year again when we recruit for our boards and commissions. We have openings on every board and commission, and so if you'd like to work on anything with the city, from parks to open space to planning, we'd love to have your help, and it's a great time to learn more about how the city works and meet new friends. Those applications are open through Valentine's Day, February 14th at 5 p.m., and the only requirement is that you reside within the city, so it doesn't matter citizenship status or anything of that type. You just need to have an address within the city. Need to be 18 years of age. And for specific seats, there may be other requirements on just a few boards, but most boards, it's just you need to be a resident. And if you'd like to have more information, you can go to bouldercolorado.gov/boards-commissions. And then last, I have a motion to amend the agenda tonight, add item 8D, which is a discussion and potentially a vote on the severe weather shelter policy.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of amending the agenda, raise your hand. It's unanimous, so we will do that. So shall we move forward into open comment? Okay, when I call your name for open comment, please come to the microphone, and I'll call a few other names. So if you would queue up and be ready to come to the microphone when the previous speaker is finished. We'll start with Lynn Siegel, followed by James Feeney and Evan Ravitz. Lynn, are you here? Seeing no Lynn, James Feeney, and then Evan Ravitz, and then Stephen Newman.
I'm James Feeney from North Boulder, and welcome to this week's episode of Council Television. Tonight, a riddle. How many Boulder City Council members does it take to change a light bulb? In our last meeting, again, Council failed to explain why, after complaints, the dark sky ordinance is still not being enforced in the residential outdoor lighting in my neighborhood, the Boulder Meadows Mobile Home Park. Council has a duty to support the charter. City manager has an oath and duty to enforce the ordinances. The dark sky ordinance requires that residential lights be shielded, less than 900 lumens, and have a color temperature 3,000 Kelvin or less. Simple. When city attorney makes statements before council that are clearly absurd and city manager makes statements that plainly contradict the facts, it is incumbent upon each council member to establish a standard of truth and integrity in the proceedings, despite such inability by council mayor and mayor pro tem. City manager says, we're enforcing the dark sky ordinance, but even casual observation will demonstrate that statement is false, unless city manager was referring to some kind of selective enforcement only available to less ethnic neighborhoods. She says streetlights are exempt, apparently unable to distinguish between a streetlight from an entry light. She says streetlights are grandfathered, apparently confusing an amortization delay with a grandfather clause while refusing to consult with city attorney. But again, no matter, entry lights are not streetlights. City attorney says there are no property lines in a mobile home park requiring that my rights to public streets are exactly the same as my leasehold rights. No, Tom, city manager's police do not allow me to set my lawn furniture in the middle of a public street. Though oddly, they are willing to let you drive your car on my lawn in violation of BRC 7614. City manager just doesn't always enforce ordinances in mobile home parks, does she? I remind council members that the possibility of future code revisions do not obviate the requirements for current enforcement duties. Now, where silence means no and yes requires action, state for the record, will any member of council direct city manager to actually enforce the dark sky ordinance?
Thank you, James. Next is Evan Ravitz, followed by Stephen Newman and Patrick Murphy.
Evan Ravitz, North Boulder. So I think everyone at City Hall knows by now that I'm calling on council to fire the city attorney and city manager. Tonight I'm going to let Boulder's Nobel Prize winning physicist Eric Cornell make the case. This is a letter to the camera he wrote in 2012. Boulder City Attorney Tom Carr has written a memo to the City Council of Boulder recommending they ban non-medical marijuana sales. This memo coming 3 weeks after Boulder voters approved Amendment 64 by a 2-to-1 margin. Before the City Council accepts his advice, they should consider carefully Carr's history with citizen votes and marijuana prohibition. Before coming to Boulder, Carr was city attorney in Seattle. Voters there adopted a resolution instructing Seattle to make arrest and prosecution of marijuana cases the lowest priority. The Seattle police compiled and arrests declined sharply. Tom Carr, however, actually increased the percentage of marijuana arrests he chose to prosecute. In 2009, Seattle voters rejected Carr's bid for re-election, favoring by a 27% margin the opponent who vowed to respect the will of the people. Carr's loss was one of the worst defeats ever suffered by an incumbent in Seattle. A few months later, and 1,000 miles away, the Boulder City Council offered Carr a shot at redemption and hired him as city attorney. Now, after only 2 years of his new job, Carr is confronted with another citizens' marijuana initiative he disapproves of. City attorneys are appointed, not elected in Boulder, and thus Carr will not need to answer directly to the voters of Boulder if he flouts their will with respect to ending marijuana prohibition. He may feel that here in Boulder he has a freer hand than he did in Seattle. My understanding is that the City Council to be continued.
Thank you, Evan. We have Stephen Newman and Patrick Murphy, and after Patrick Murphy, we will slot in Lynn Siegel, who I see has arrived.
Good evening, council members. I'm grateful for the opportunity to voice a concern that's been on my mind since moving to Boulder in 2015. Ordinance 9-8-5 of the Municipal Code has been a cause for significant stress and discomfort for myself and those I've lived with throughout my time here. I'm sure you're all aware of the occupancy limit in the zoning code, and I'm sure there's a spectrum of support and opposition on the council for that. My intention for being here today is just to lend a perspective on the ordinance that may not be represented regularly. My suggestion is simple: change the ordinance to say the number of unrelated occupants in these zones not to exceed the advertised number of bedrooms. This issue is present not just in Boulder, but in high-cost cities across the country. Tenants are put at the mercy of landlords. Truly dangerous overcrowding is difficult to single out. A whole class of people feel distrustful of their neighbors and even wary of the police. Having a complaint-based system such as the one in Boulder causes significant tension in neighborhoods and encourages suspicion, which doesn't correlate with healthy, friendly neighborhood dynamics. The co-op exemption was a step in the right direction, but it leaves a gray area between the 3 unrelated people and a cooperative of 4 or more people who are required to jump through all sorts of hoops to be in compliance. And to point out what, in my view, is the discriminatory nature of this ordinance, let's say a family of 8 with 2 parents, an aunt and uncle, and 4 children live in a 6-bedroom, 3,500 square foot home with 5 vehicles. A group of 4 unrelated adults in their 20s and 30s who work full-time and have 3 vehicles would need to form a co-op or find some other legal loophole, such as forming a domestic partnership in order to live in that same home. The zoning discriminates against primarily younger people or those from lower socioeconomic statuses who are not choosing traditional family relationship styles. In this example, the family would likely be more of a burden and nuisance to the neighborhood with all the vehicles and increased traffic than the 4 unrelated adults. However, they're allowed to live in that home when the unrelated adults would need to form a co-op in order to live in that same home. Issues that are a concern for neighbors, such as traffic, parking, and noise, can and are addressed by other ordinances.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Patrick Murphy, and then Lynn Siegel, and then Elizabeth Black.
My name is Patrick Murphy. I live in Boulder. This is the continuation of the 24 articles of the Muni Naughty List. Article 7 rate increase of 30% just 18 months after day one, as revealed by a cash flow analysis that had to be acquired by legal action. The Muni claimed to have a financial evaluation that was sound and robust. First, the city claimed that the financial analysis was a work product used to make a decision and would not have to be provided. But since that work product was already used to create a paper muni, I filed a Colorado Open Records Act demand to obtain it. Then the city said that the spreadsheet didn't exist. And magically, it appeared the night before the hearing. The city claimed that since I had it, didn't have to worry about anything and I could just not have the hearing. I refused. Much was revealed at that hearing, including the way the day one requirement to match Excel's rates could be subverted, using what is called capitalized interest to hide a 30% rate increase for 18 months. Article 8, not including the costs of other Boulder departments working on the Muni until forced to do so, and taking years to finally admit that these are true Muni costs. Some employees worked 100% to 60% of their time on the Muni but were not billed to the Muni. This is deceit. Article 9, failure to include about $120 to $300 million in going concern costs as part of condemnation, on the flimsy basis that it has never been done before in Colorado, even though it has occurred in Colorado and has occurred nationally. To be continued with Articles 10 through 24. The planet burns, floods, and dies while Boulder fiddles. Time to burn the fiddle.
Thank you, Patrick. Lynn, would you like to testify now or later?
Sure, that's fine. I thought of another thing, 311 I was going to talk about, but just been on the phone with the IRS for the last hour and a half, so I'm kind of out of breath with that. I've been trying to reach them since October 15th for all of the maze of things going on, and they owe me money. So, first of all, if there's 8 people that sign up, why can't they have 3 minutes each? I don't get it. You know, we used to have 3 minutes and up to 45 minutes total for 15 people or something. So now I understand that we get 2 minutes no matter if two people are signed up. There's something wrong with this system. Now, 311 Mapleton. This is just not okay. I want an answer to this. I've written you countless times. There was a fire on the property. Now there's a rogue bulldozer driver breaking in and bulldozing the landmarked cottage on this multi-zillion-dollar property that's going to get $10,000 to $50,000 a month for one person and 300 square feet. That's doing a lot for, you know, the housing affordability in Boulder, isn't it? My property value is going to shoot up in my neighborhood, which is Mountain Heights, next between Mapleton and Newlands. How is it that we can get a rogue bulldozer driver breaking in to this property, and it's like, oh, reported as, oh, geez, this landmark property, it's just this rogue bulldozer driver? I don't think so. I want some answers here. I've talked to James Hewitt, I've talked to the landmarks, I've talked to lots of people, and I've not gotten any answers. We can't go in there and police that place ourselves. It's been blighted for 2 years. They've had a fire on the property, not okay.
Thank you, Lynn. Next, we have Elizabeth Black, followed by Leslie Glustrom and Mark Gelband.
Good evening. Elizabeth Black, 4340 North 13th Street. Last month, I described the Citizen Science Soil Health Project and our surprising findings that our organic growers' soil health is not any better than our conventional growers' soil health. We all think organic is better. How can this be? Well, it comes down to one word, tillage. That is plowing, cultivating, and turning the soil. We humans have tilled the earth forever. It must be perfect, right? Well, maybe not totally perfect. I divided our 96 sites into 3 groups: zero tillage, reduced tillage, and conventional tillage. Our zero tillage sites include grasslands, forests, and irrigated pastures, places where the soil is not being disturbed. Reduced tillage sites include growers using strip till with herbicides and other growing methods that minimize soil disturbance. Conventionally tilled sites include growers using moldboard plows and lots of mechanical cultivation. Many organic growers are in this group because they depend on plowing and cultivation for weed control. So here's what we found. You can see the pattern. Our zero tillage sites, the green lines in the graph, are mostly clustered at the top end with the highest soil health scores in a median of 20. So our pastures, grasslands, and forests have the healthiest soil and sequester the most carbon. Our reduced tillage sites, the yellow lines, fall mostly in the middle with a median of 13. And our conventionally tilled sites, the red lines, are mostly clustered on the bottom end with low soil health scores and a median of almost 10. Stay tuned for our next exciting installment to find out why our untilled lands are totally rocking out and sequestering more carbon than our tilled lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next is Leslie Glustrom, followed by Mark Gelband and David Prowl III.
Evening, Council. Leslie Glustrom, and I live in Boulder. And as always, I really want to thank you so much. I know that you all really care about climate change, and we have so many decisions. You do a great job, but if we don't get it right on climate change, just look at Australia. It kind of doesn't matter all these other decisions. So thank you for your leadership, as always. And I'm trained in science, so I usually have graphs and things like that, but I realize that doesn't work for everybody. So I used my non-existent artistic skills to try to represent this in a different way. And so we hear a lot from Patrick about the expenses of the Boulder Municipalization Project, about $23 million over the last 8 years. That's a lot of money, $2 to $3 million a year. But as it turns out, on a per person basis, that's about $2 to $3 a month per residence, sometimes $4, but not too much. What we don't hear a lot about, and what we have a really hard time because it's really complicated and it's down at the commission, we don't hear a lot about what goes on the Excel side of the coin, so to speak. So this is more or less to proportion, about 7 times greater. These are Excel's profits after tax, after all their expenses, all their CEO salaries and all of that. And if it was before tax, it would be bigger. If it was the revenues, it would be much bigger. So all I'm asking is that for the council to be sure to try to keep an open mind, make sure that we're looking at both sides of this equation, to not just kind of decide already that we know what's going on. Councilman Yates is really smart. I would really love to have you looking at both sides of this instead of having made up your mind that this isn't okay without really understanding this. So my last question, which I'll ask quite a few times this year, is the Revolutionary War went over time and over budget? And how many of you wish that George Washington had given up? And I'm going to ask that over and over again. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Leslie. So next we have Mark Gelband, David Prowl III, and Cindy Schmidt. Is Mark Gelband here? Seeing him not here. David Prowl III, Cindy Schmidt, and Daniel Harberger.
Hey, good evening. Happy New Year. Welcome, new members. Goodbye, old members. I'm not righteously indignant about anything, like my brother is here and other people here. I just wish to speak to the what I know y'all are going to do, and that's continue to keep the severe weather shelter open. I would call for public bathrooms and showers. We definitely need that in town. We need a day facility. We need to keep our beautiful multi-million-dollar facility for the homeless brothers and sisters that we all share open 24/7 and 366 this year. That's about it. I didn't get to speak last year. I didn't make the cutoff, but I get that our time, things are changing. I wish we had a few more minutes, but thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, David. We have Cindy Schmidt, followed by Daniel Harberger and Henry Beer.
I'm Cindy Schmidt. I live in Boulder, and I'm on the Colorado Chautauqua Association Board, or CCA. I would like to address an issue emerging in the public discourse that Chautauqua is being commercialized and that the proposed bylaw changes are somehow evidence of that. This claim is patently untrue. There have been no major changes at Chautauqua for decades. The dining hall has been there for over 120 years. CMF has been producing the Summer Music Festival for over 40 years, and we have about the same number of popular concerts as always, and CCA has rented out cottages as long as anyone can remember. As stated in the lease with the city, CCA is solely responsible for the maintenance and preservation of dozens of historic buildings, for the appearance of the grounds, for community programming, and for all other operating costs. We take our responsibility to operate without city subsidy very seriously, and we are continually looking for ways to increase revenue and reduce costs like any responsible organization. But none of those ways, including hiring a development director, can be remotely characterized as commercialization. A letter to the editor of the Camera this morning asked the reader to imagine the loss to the community if Chautauqua had been turned into a convention center. Now, that would constitute commercialization, and it is exactly the kind of thing that could happen if CCA doesn't fix the bylaws and eliminate the potential for special interests to control the board. Our antiquated bylaws need to be modernized to eliminate vote buying of special interests, and the city attorney has said that unless we do that, CCA could be found in breach of our lease with the city. This is an existential threat to an iconic institution that belongs to all the people of Boulder. I ask that you disregard hyperbolic claims about commercialization and support the association's current efforts to amend our outdated governance structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Next, we have Daniel Harberger, followed by Henry Beer and Deborah Van den Honert.
Is there a button I just pressed to get started?
There you go.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here, and thanks for letting me come and talk. I wanted to speak about the Marpa House Historic Landmark designation. That may be proceeding in the next few weeks, but I might be out of town, so this is very important to me, and I wanted to make sure that I could put my opinion out on that topic. So this is the second time that there's been a unanimous vote by the Landmarks Department to move forward the designation of the Marpa House, which is located on roughly 12th and Aurora for historic landmark status. So they've approved it twice, but now it will move to the City Council for approval. There are two questions that kind of are pending about that. One is, does it fit the criteria? And then the other question is, posed to you guys, should it be done? There has been a city review, and that was proposed to the Landmarks Board that found that it should be moved forward. That was one of the reasons why they originally moved forward with the unanimous vote, the decision to progress that landmarking. And then with the most recent meeting, that continued once again. So I don't want to go into all the details there, but it's been reviewed by the Landmarks Board twice, and they've said that it should be preserved. The other question is, from a community perspective, is it important to preserve something like the Marpa House? And, I grew up in Boulder. I was born here. My grandmother's from here. My parents and my mom and my dad live about 8 blocks from me, so we're all in the same kind of community. And there's been so much change in Boulder over the last 20 years that I've been growing up, and we only have so many opportunities to preserve these little gems. I think Marpa House is such an amazing piece of Boulder's history. I think it's an amazing gem, and I think we need to take all we can and put as much effort as we can into preserving these few bastions of Boulder's history that remain. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much, Daniel. We have Henry Beer, Deborah Van den Honert, and Michael Duffy.
I'm Henry Beer, Boulder resident. I'm also a member of the Colorado Chautauqua Association Board of Directors. I'm here tonight to assure Council that this board takes very seriously its claims and concerns noted in City Attorney Tom Carr's November 25th letter to our board. Our board shares these very same concerns that have troubled previous boards as well, but because our current bylaws, some of which date back nearly 100 years, the board is prevented from addressing the core issue, that of the potential for vote buying by special interest groups. Last December 16th, our board approved new bylaws by a vote of 12-2 with one abstention, bylaws that will definitively modernize our outdated governance structure. To our knowledge, there are no other Colorado 501c3s arts and cultural organizations operating at our scale with these kinds of antiquated and frankly open to abuse voting membership arrangements. Memberships are not going away, quite the opposite. Members will continue to enjoy their current benefits. They will just not have to include the kind of flawed voting structure noted in Tom's letter, flaws that can lead to the potential abuse that jeopardizes currently Chautauqua's lease with the city. We're reaching out to our entire membership through mailings, emails, print ads, and of course word of mouth to first ensure that our members understand the issues, and further to ensure our members understand fully the need to reach the 75% voter approval threshold it will take to actually change the bylaws. We know that failure to change these bylaws may trigger a breach of our lease, posing a threat to Chautauqua's very existence as we know it today. This would be a tragedy and a loss for our community. This board is working very hard to get out the vote so we can address these long-standing governance challenges posed by the current bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Deborah Vanden Honert and Michael Duffy.
Hi, my name is Deborah Vanden Honert. I'm a year-round resident and a private cottage owner at Chautauqua. I'm here to raise concerns about Chautauqua Association's proposed new bylaws, and in particular about the process. It's right. I agree that CCA, the board and its members, and the city, for that matter, should be concerned and care about the potential negative impact of vote buying, special interests, and conflicts of interest. But threatening to issue a notice of breach of the lease and rushing to propose bylaws without stakeholder input is a bad way to solve problems and make needed improvements. I served on the board, the CCA board, from 2011 to 2014. During that time, I participated in the city CCA working group that developed the guiding principles for place management and fiscal sustainability, which were approved by both CCA and City Council in 2012. Those principles support the importance of getting public input when changes are being considered. And they are consistent with the philosophy recently endorsed by Council for Public Engagement, and I quote, "Local government makes better decisions and creates more responsive programs and services when the community it serves has a meaningful voice." So instead of the city threatening litigation and instead of CCA rushing ahead with its proposed bylaws, I ask the city to support an effort by CCA to set up a good public process, a process in which CCA engages with its various stakeholders, a process that gives the community a meaningful voice and a chance to help find solutions. I certainly hope for that to happen, and I really believe the outcome from such a process would meet the needs of the city, the CCA, and the community it serves. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Michael Duffy?
Mayor, he's signed up for a public hearing instead.
Okay, great. So with that, we will close open comments. Lynette?
Your next item is the consent agenda.
Sam, I had a question for City Attorney real quick on open comment.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Good point. Oh, so staff, do you have any response to open comment?
I do not, thanks.
Nor I.
Okay. Thank you, Adam, for the reminder. Adam, go ahead.
Sure. Just a request, and we can do this offline. I'd love to hear the history of Mr. Feeney's complaint about the dark sky ordinance. Sure. Just because he's been a consistent member of the community coming out to speak about one specific thing, so I'd like to try to get some resolution there. Okay.
Rachel?
And I had two. One was also on Mr. Feeney. It might be helpful for the whole council to hear what's going on with enforcement, and the concern being, is there selective enforcement where the manufactured homes are not getting the benefit of the dark sky ordinance being enforced? So an update on that might be helpful for all of us as well. And my second question is on Lynn Siegel's question about 2 versus 3 minutes during open comment. Is there a number under which, if we only had 2 people, do we get 3 minutes, or is there a for 2 minutes for open?
I can answer, Lynn. The rules say it's 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So go ahead, Darren.
Well, just for public hearings, it's 2 minutes if there are 15 or more people signed up.
Yep.
For open comments, it's 2 minutes. Period. right, if I have that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
And if I could further clarify, the reason it's 2 minutes only if 2 people sign up is because you never know how many people are going to sign up, and people need to prepare their statements to be of adequate length. So because we also have people that can come in and sign up between 5 and 6. So that's the rationale.
Anyone else? Very good.
Now your consent agenda, items A through E are before you tonight.
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Any questions? Okay.
It's a show of hands.
Show of hands. So all in favor of the consent agenda? It's unanimous?
You have 3 call-up check-ins tonight. The first one is a landmark alteration certificate for 311 Mapleton.
So Chris Mestruck is here to give a little bit of history about what happened at 311 Mapleton before you make your decision. Chris.
Thanks, Jane. Good evening, Council. Chris Meschuk, Interim Planning Director, Assistant City Manager. So one of the call-ups before you is a landmark alteration certificate for 311 Mapleton. So to just give a little bit of the background, as a part of the site review application for the redevelopment of that property, one of the conditions of approval for the site review was that the property owner preserve and landmark several structures on the property. They agreed to that as a part of their site review. They submitted an application for landmark designation for some of those structures. Subsequently, on I think it was November 13th or November 16th, one of those structures, which is a frame structure, a duplex, was vandalized. Someone took a bulldozer and demolished about half the structure. Our staff were on site that next Monday morning or Monday afternoon with the property owner. They were going to relocate that structure on site, actually closer to where its historic context was. It was moved once before on that site. So they were already going to be doing a landmark alteration certificate for that relocation, and then they were going to do a rehab to that building. As a result, now they need to also do a partial reconstruction of that building. So we had the applicant bring all of those materials together, all those different applications together into one large landmark alteration certificate, both now to reconstruct, rehabilitate, and relocate that structure. So that's part of what the landmark alteration certificate is that is before you tonight that was approved by the Landmarks Board.
Great, thank you. Questions from council?
Has there been any progress in determining who actually did that?
I do know that the Boulder Police Department came to the site and took evidence. I do not know the current status of the case.
And do you happen to know were other structures on the property damaged? Did this bulldozer just go for this one structure, or did they go other places?
My understanding is that there were other places on site. There was quite a lot of movement by the excavator on the site, as well as there was some damage done to other structures that were in the process of demolition.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
So then we have 2 others.
Landmark alteration certificate for 903 Pine Street.
I thought we'd just go through and see if anyone had any interest.
And easement vacation for 6025 Arapahoe Avenue.
Great. Does anyone on council have interest in calling any of these 3 up? Seeing none?
Your first public hearing is second reading of ordinance 8366, amending Title 10, structures.
So with us tonight are Will Highfield, our Chief Building Official, and Kristen Whitko from Climate Initiatives, who will be presenting this matter and answering any questions you might have. And I'm going to turn it over to Will to begin.
Thank you, and
Good evening, Council. Thank you. Good evening, Council. Kristen and I are before you this evening to recommend adoption of the 2018 suite of international building codes, which includes 9 codes, and the 2020 City of Boulder Energy Conservation Code. Most of the amendments that you have in your packet are just housekeeping. What this presentation will focus on are the significant changes from where the codes currently are to where they will be if you adopt them as recommended by staff. The first significant change would be the adoption of the international existing building code. The City of Boulder has not previously adopted this code, even though it's been in publication for over 15 years. It's now necessary to adopt this code because the provisions that used to be in Chapter 34 of the Building Code have been deleted, and they are now contained in this code. Also in this code are 2 other compliance paths available to designers and property owners. During the process for the adoption, which started over 14 months ago, staff has reached out to the public and engaged the public on at least 10 different occasions. And during those outreach, we received feedback from staff. One of the major issues of feedback that from the public, one of the major issues of feedback that we received was the implications that the energy code was having on small projects with the way that the thresholds were being determined based on the difference between property value based on the assessor's value and the value of the project. So to address that concern, staff is recommending using some definitions that are in the existing building code under classification of work. The existing building code defines 5 different types of classification of work. One of those is alterations. It's just a different term used for repairs. And under alterations, there are 3 different levels defined. We're proposing to use these different levels for the thresholds to determine what level of compliance to the energy code has to be obtained when a building is being altered. Now, level 1 is basically a remove and replace without doing any changes. A level 2 is making changes to the building, whether it's moving walls around or extending an existing system or anything like that. And a level 3 is a project that involves more than 50% of the floor area of the building. So that would have a higher threshold requirement for energy compliance than a level 2 would. And then in the energy code alone, we've added a level 4 for substantial renovations. That is not contained in the existing building code. That is exclusive to the energy code for the use of using this to identify thresholds for energy code compliance. There's also,
I'm sorry, can you define substantial renovations, please? Is it
think of a total gut. So they're going to go in, they're not going to take the structure down, but it's pretty much a total gut.
So it's a tier in between a halfway and a complete tear down.
That would be one way to say it, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Also included in the proposed amendments to address local concerns are some amendments that address all-gender toilet facilities. There's language in the amendments that will allow property owners or their agents to provide all-gender facilities instead of, and this is code language, separate sex facilities have to be identified for specific genders. So there's a provision in the amendments that allow this as an option for multiple user facilities. And in addition to that, there's language that would require single user facilities to become all gender inclusive by the first of the year. And the intent of these amendments that are both in the plumbing code and in the building code is for the signage to be neutral, to not reference gender in any way, rather either by words or by symbols. Another amendment, well, this actually isn't an amendment, this is a provision. For 12 years now, the residential code has required all new single-family homes to be protected with automatic sprinkler systems. The City of Boulder has chosen to exempt 1- and 2-family dwellings from this requirement. As your chief building official and Chief Fire Marshal David Lowry are recommending that we not continue that amendment. The reason for this has to do with time, T-I-M-E. We currently do not build homes the way we did 30 years ago. We build them much bigger, we build them with open floor plans, and we build them with engineered wood. Engineered wood does not perform in fires the same way that solid sawn lumber did, and we also have different fire loading based on the furnishings that are in our building, in our homes. So what this amounts to is we have shorter times to effect an escape from a building. We have shorter times to rescue from a building, and we have much quicker times for flashovers. There's some tests done by, I believe it was UL and NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, that determined with some new homes, flashover can occur in a little time as 5 minutes, where we used to have around 25 minutes before that happened. So it has to do with the way we build, the materials that we build with, and the materials that we furnish our houses with, which are a lot of synthetic and petroleum-based products, which have very high heat release rates. So the automatic sprinkler provision in the code just reads that 1- and 2-family dwellings shall be protected with that, with the sprinkler system. But then it says, if it's an existing building that's going through an alteration or an addition, it doesn't have to be sprinkled unless there's already a sprinkler in the building. So this only applies to newly constructed buildings. And for the last 3 years, we've averaged building 39 new homes a year. So that would be the first impact of this provision. However, this would also impact any building that's undergoing a change of use that didn't used to be a single-family home and now becomes a single-family home, such as an ADU. So if you had a detached building on a property and it was a garage or a studio and it was converted to an ADU, that would be a single-family home, that would be a new single-family home, and it would be required to be protected with an automatic sprinkler system.
So, pardon me, question, Tom. Prior to the recent changes in ADU regulations, ADUs had to have a rental license, correct?
I think that's right, Sam.
And so when they change, if they change from a studio or an office into an ADU under the prior regime, I believe they had to sprinkle the converted office.
I'd have to check, Sam. I don't really remember.
I think that was a point of discussion that we heard a lot.
I remember we had the discussion. I don't remember how it came out. I'm sorry.
So I guess the reason I raised the point is this is not going to be as much of a change as it might appear on the surface, because I believe in the past it was understood that if you turned an ADU into a rental, that because of our rental regs, it would have to be sprinkled.
Yeah, I thought maybe we exempted them, though, for short term. Maybe it was just short term we exempted them from the sprinkler requirement. It was long term. I think you're right, Sam.
Okay. Anyway, that's just context. Aaron?
So with the ADU provision, is that solely for detached ADUs?
Yes, because if it was part of the existing home and it was attached, then that's already an existing dwelling. And you'll notice that the language here talks about 1- and 2-family dwellings. The codes have historically always treated 1- and 2-family dwellings as a single home.
Great. So just to clarify, if you have a single-family home basement and you turn the basement into an ADU, you will not be required to add sprinklers.
That's correct. Because
only in a detached.
That's
ADU.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
There are also...
Excuse me, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Mary.
It's also my understanding that an ADU requires a separate water line for the fire sprinklers?
That's correct. It's the design construction standards for the city will not allow the sprinkler system to feed off of the domestic water line, because if the meter fails or the water is disconnected, we don't want to deactivate the sprinkler system.
And then that also went to, has an impact on the expense, obviously, to build it detached.
Absolutely, and more so for the existing buildings. So if it's new construction, you're already trenching for the one water line for the domestic use, so you can put the other water line right there. But if it's an existing building, unless they're installing a new water line, then yes, it would be additional expense.
Okay, thank you. And then I have another question. When the ADUs amendments were passed, 2 years ago, was it now? One of the changes that we made was to allow a family to live in the ADU. And it was the way that we defined an adult, I believe. So I believe the previous slide, if we could look at it again. Oh, the one that had the ADU is not a one family, or is a one?
It's a detached one-family.
Yeah, new detached are one-family dwellings. Okay, never mind. I get it now. Thank you.
There are also provisions in the proposed amendments to include appendices Q, R, and S. Appendices are not part of the code unless specifically adopted. Appendix R has to do with light straw clay construction, and Appendix S has to deal with straw bale construction. Appendix Q is new to the residential code. This is the first code cycle that contains provisions for tiny houses. And the picture on the left where the unit is on wheels, that's not what we're talking about. That is not regulated by the residential code. That is a vehicle, so it's not regulated by the residential code. What we're referring to is something like the picture on the right. It's a dwelling that's on a permanent foundation connected to permanent utilities. But the caveat is that this dwelling can only be a maximum of 400 square feet. By definition, tiny houses are limited to a maximum of 400 square feet. And what this appendix does, it relaxes the standards for the ceiling height by about 4 inches, and it relaxes the requirements for the stairs, getting to the loft, and the emergency egress from the loft. And it's specific to tiny houses. And as I said, they're on permanent foundation and connected to permanent utilities. And the units cannot be prefabricated and moved into the city unless they're built under a program like the state program for pre-manufactured homes, because there has to be inspections either by the city building department or by the state division of housing. Somebody has to be doing those inspections, and the state electrical board has already made this ruling also.
Great. So, question here, Mark.
The written materials make reference to Appendix Q and how we are modifying Appendix Q. But as I was making my way through this light reading, I at no point saw Appendix Q. Is that available for us to take a look at as we are modifying and adopting that appendix? It would be nice to see what else it says.
Yes, we can get that information to you. It's only 2 pages.
Okay.
So basically what it says is...
Even better. I like to read these things.
But, well, can you finish what you were going to say? You said basically...
Basically what it says is you have to follow all the provisions in the residential code except for what's contained in this index. And then it just lowers the requirement for ceiling height and addresses access to the loft and the loft height and the egress.
Great. Can I ask another question?
Yeah, Aaron?
So if you can go back to the previous slide, please. So can you talk about finished units moving into jurisdiction a little bit? Because my understanding is that some other jurisdictions like Lyons, for example, have allowed tiny homes but have not had the same requirements. So, but you're saying there's some state regulation here. Could you explain this a little bit more, the rationale, please?
There are some federal building codes and some state building codes. The state has a state electrical code and a state plumbing code for jurisdictions that don't adopt building codes, and there's still a few of those in the state of Colorado. The state will come in and issue the permits and do the inspections for the electrical and the plumbing systems. And the state has made a ruling that you can't bring in prefabricated units because the in-progress construction inspections have to be performed. And so that's also my position as the building official. The residential code mandates that we perform certain inspections during the actual construction phase of these units. So if they were to be manufactured off-site somewhere and brought in, they would have to be done under a program similar to manufactured homes, which are inspected by the state.
So there are facilities that pre-manufacture, I mean, I know there's such a thing as a pre-manufactured house, right? And so those have specific inspections that are done. So you could potentially purchase a tiny home from a facility such as that it had inspections done?
Yes, if it was an approved facility, yes.
Approved, okay, thank you.
Rachel?
I think I didn't quite follow. How is Lyons able to do it? And could we do what Lyons is doing?
I don't know. I'd have to research Lyons codes to find out.
And is that sort of the issue that makes us shy away from the picture of the tiny home on wheels versus the one that was on that was fixed?
Well, the tiny home that's on wheels, as the building official, I would have no authority to regulate it because it's a vehicle. It's not considered a structure per se that's regulated. That's regulated by the residential code.
Okay, and if there and is there a third category then of a tiny home that's not fixed but is just tied down, but also not on wheels?
We could amend the code to do something if that's what you wanted to do. Yes.
Well, I'm just trying to make sure I'm following all the permutations of different types of homes. This is not something that I'm overly familiar with, and what the rationales are for saying yes or no to each type.
Can I respond a little bit? So just to put this in context, what this does is it puts the ability to do tiny homes into our code as it's recommended by the International Building Code. We can amend the International Building Code, and we do that in lots of places. If you look at this at the code, we have lots of local amendments. To build tiny homes, you'd still have to figure out where to zone them and allow them. So if you want to have tiny homes, you'll have to have another discussion about where they should be. So as part of that discussion, we could drill down into what you want to see in terms of the building code. But right now, all you're doing is authorizing them as recommended by the International Building Code without local amendment. You could do local amendments, and if you want to do that, we'd certainly be happy to research Lyons and other cities and see what they've done. That's a bigger conversation. This is really just the first step to recognize that the IBC has, for the first time, put code provisions relating to tiny homes. You're putting those in. This is really just step one.
Aaron?
Are you good? Well, so just to follow up on that, so thank you for that explanation, Tom. But aren't we adding additional requirements around the permanent foundations and the permanent connections to utilities?
No, I don't believe so. I recommended that be put in there just to make it explicit instead of implicit, because the way that the appendix reads, it says you have to follow all of the other provisions in the IRC except for what's in this appendix, and the IRC has permanent foundations under its buildings.
So you would say that's a clarification rather than an additional requirement?
That seemed to be the big question that came up when we were doing public outreach. So we just wanted to make it clear to avoid any confusion that we were talking about houses that are on permanent foundations permanently connected to utilities.
That's helpful, thank you. I got one more for you. So Tom, talking about tiny homes and land use regulations, would this not allow you to do a home under 400 square feet as an ADU? Sort of what I'm imagining here is that it's allowing you to build a little bit of a smaller unit with a little bit of a different requirement on some of those, like floor height, ceiling height.
I think that's right, although I picture tiny homes as taking advantage of a one-family lot and building multiple homes there, but I think you're right, Aaron.
Right, I understand that if you wanted to allow 6 tiny homes on a single-family lot, that would require changes to the zoning.
Yes.
But you could do a tiny home as an ADU under these regulations.
I think that's right. I think these would govern them, and
Great,
they may want to refine them. And just, I did send you all a link to the Appendix Q, and I posted it on Hotline.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, want to go ahead?
There's also a recommended amendment that clarifies the intent of a current amendment that requires a change of use in commercial buildings that exceed 2,000 square feet in floor area to be protected with an automatic sprinkler system. in conversations with our Chief Fire Marshal, David Lowry, it was not always the intent to do this straight across the board. It was only if there's a higher fire hazard or a greater hazard with the new occupancy. So we have a recommended amendment that addresses that specifically and recommend using a table that exists in the existing building code to identify those hazards, which one is a lesser hazard or a higher hazard. And that was in response to some public feedback that we got and from feedback that we received from the Planning Board. One of the 9 codes that we're recommending for adoption is the International Wildland Urban Interface Code. And Section 503 of this code talks about the requirement for ignition-resistant building materials for the decking, the walking surface of decks. And it says in order to qualify as ignition-resistant, it has to meet this test standard, or it has to be non-combustible material, or it needs to be fire retardant treated wood, or it needs to be an assembly that meets the requirements for a Class A roof assembly. The most common choice for this decking material is composite decking, which has the color finish in the manufacturing of the product, and it has a lifetime maintenance-free component to it, so property owners prefer to use that. Unfortunately, I have not been able to find a single composite decking material that meets that test standard, so I've been in conversation with several other jurisdictions. The County of Boulder has amended the code to allow a lower standard, which would allow some, but not all, composite decking. Some. Jefferson County has adopted the same amendment effective the first of the year, and the California State Fire Marshal has also designed their own test where they will allow some composite decking material to be used for decks. My personal opinion is that we're using the wrong test standard for these decks. We're using a standard for how we test ceiling finishes and wall finish materials. We're not using the same test that we use for roofs, and we're not using the test that we use for floors. So I'm not convinced that we're using the proper test here.
So I have a question for you. Are you recommending that we adopt the urban wildland interface standard with an exception?
We have an amendment built into the code, a recommended amendment that lines us up with the county, with Boulder County, so we would be consistent with what Boulder County's doing.
Very good. Thank you.
And this is what we're talking about.
Mary?
Follow-up question. You mentioned that California is developing its own test?
Yes, the state fire marshals, yes.
And is that something that Colorado might be considering, or how would you know that this wood would meet that lower standard?
That California Fire Marshal Office actually produces a list of all the materials that's been tested that meet that requirement. So you could go onto their website and find out that particular product if it meets that. And we can do that with the same thing that we're recommending. We can go on and see how these materials, what tests they'll pass. And it's actually, they get an A, B, or C rating.
Okay.
So we know.
Thank you.
And that concludes the significant changes to the building code. So now Kristen is going to take over and
shuffle this over
and talk about the City of Boulder Energy Conservation Code.
Okay, good evening. So switching gears to talk about the energy code. What's being proposed with this code update is transitioning from the 2017 City of Boulder Energy Conservation Code to the 2020 City of Boulder Energy Conservation Code. And this is different to the codes that Will has been talking about. You know, there are a lot of national codes that we just adopt and then make amendments to suit Boulder's needs. And in the case of the energy code, we really, along with other leading jurisdictions, take the national energy code and rewrite it to be a code that's about 20% better than the national code. And we do this because the national codes aren't really keeping pace with the level of efficiency that we need to keep up with to meet our climate commitment goals. So we've rewritten the code to create the 2020 City of Boulder code.
Christian, could you pull your mic just a bit closer?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So tonight, I'm not going to go through every single change and all the details of all the change in the background. Back in April of 2019, I presented a lot of that detail to council, as well as the Energy Code roadmap. We have a roadmap that gets us to net zero energy codes by 2030, and we'll plan to adopt a new energy code every 3 years. And I got into a lot of that detail in April. In the interest of time, I won't do that tonight, so I'll just sort of give the high points. But if anyone has detailed questions that they want to ask, feel free. There we go. So on the residential side, the change is really represented pretty well by this graph. To meet the energy code on the residential side, projects have to meet an energy rating index, which is also known as a HERS score, which is a home energy rating score that goes from 0 to 100. A 0 is a net zero energy home. A 100 is an energy code compliant home built in roughly 2006. And our requirements are based on the square footage of the project. The blue line in this graph represents the current ERI requirements, and the orange line represents the proposed 2020 new construction ERI requirements. You can see that the requirements for smaller homes start at a HERS rating or an ERI score of 50, and then they move down the larger the home gets to a net zero energy home for any home over 3,000 square feet. And that's different to the current code in that right now the threshold is 5,000 square feet. It needs to be net zero energy. So the requirements are just getting more stringent. What's also notable in this graph is the horizontal line where an ERI of 20 is, that red line. Basically, any home that needs to get an ERI score less than 20 also has to be an all-electric home. The way the code is written and the way that interacts with the state regulations around how much renewables you can put on your home, any home under an ERI of 20 has to be all electric. So the code update is kind of addressing two goals that we have. One, increasing the efficiency of our residential building stock, and also starting to make changes in terms of building electrification to work towards our long-term climate initiatives. Another big change to the residential energy code is aligning with the county on this particular requirement. Any applicant that's choosing to do outdoor heating, whether it's a snow melt system or a spa or a pool, will need to offset the energy consumption with renewables to do that heating outdoors.
Can I ask a question about that? Yeah, go for it. So multifamily dwellings like condo apartment buildings, they're counted as commercial under the commercial codes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do we have a similar requirement in the commercial codes?
For the outdoor heating?
The outdoor heating.
Sorry. No, there's not a parallel requirement in the commercial code that specifically addresses outdoor heating. There are requirements for pools and pool covers and things like that, but it doesn't specifically talk to these changes.
So it's something to think about. I remember us seeing projects with outdoor heated pools on planning board.
Yeah. Mark?
A condo project, 10 units, 1,000 square feet.
Mark, can you turn your mic on?
Yes, I can. In a condo project, 10 units, 1,000 square feet per unit, 10,000 feet in the aggregate, is that going to be required to be net zero, or are we judging it on the basis of each unit in terms of how?
It depends a little bit how it's built. If it has common space and internal corridors, it's governed by the commercial code. And then we have, I'll get to the commercial requirements a little bit, but we have a slightly different rating system that applies to commercial units versus residential units. If they're individual units, like a stack of townhomes, 10 homes with separate means of egress and no common space, then that's governed by the residential code. And those projects, based on square footage, would have to meet the ERI criteria.
And if somebody builds a home and it turns out that it's supposed to be net zero with a HERS score of 0 and it's 8, do we require them to demolish and rebuild, or does that go into the energy offset category?
Oftentimes when projects get into that situation, they are working with their HERS rater, and their HERS rater can sort of squeak out some more points, either adding an extra solar panel or redoing the blower door testing and tightening up the home, or changing out appliances, changing out lights, just making minor tweaks if there are just those few points over. Most HERS raters build in a pretty big buffer of 10 points just in case something like that were to occur.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so just moving on to the high points of the commercial code, basically across the board in the commercial code, we're requiring commercial buildings to be more efficient. They're 20% more efficient than the 2018 code and about 5% more efficient than what our current code requires them to be. The second bullet here, we're also changing how projects demonstrate compliance with the energy code. Where right now, projects build these theoretical models of a baseline projected model and a proposed projected energy model where it's predicting costs, and then you make this comparison. And we're moving away from that and just starting to set targets based on building type, whether it's multi-family or office, small office, and setting specific energy use index targets for each of those projects the projects need to hit. And we're making this transition in an effort to move more towards a net zero energy code ultimately that we can verify more easily. The third bullet point here is the envelope backstop. And this is kind of closing a loophole that exists in the current code. Projects can install less than high performance windows or slightly less insulation, and they can just make up for that by adding solar. With the cost of solar coming down so much in the last few years, projects are using this loophole to just install solar and not really address the building envelope. So we want to discourage projects from doing that and really make sure projects focus on the skin of the building and making it as good as it can be, because it's going to be there for decades and it's really cost prohibitive to make improvements to the building envelope later. And then the last bullet is a solar mandate. 5% of the building's energy consumption will need to be generated by renewables on site. And this is really just another step in the direction of creating a net zero energy code. Will kind of already hit on this, so I'll just touch it briefly. The energy code triggers. Currently, the energy code requirements are triggered based on the construction value of the project and the assessed value of the project per the assessor's database. And we've gotten a lot of feedback around how that doesn't seem fair and how it's hard to enforce that evenly. And so we've moved away from that and we've moved to the definitions that are established in the existing building code for the level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 alterations. Next is a requirement for construction and demolition waste. Boulder's had construction and demolition waste requirements for over a decade. The changes for this code are really, one, adjusting the requirements. We're moving to sort of align our requirements with the LEED rating systems requirements to require projects that are demoing a building reuse and recycle or divert from a landfill at least 75% of the debris. Probably the biggest change is that the requirements have always applied to residential projects, and now we're expanding that to all residential and commercial projects. And then lastly, we're also trying to improve the enforcement of this. We're proposing a refundable deposit that the applicant will put down at the time of application. And then once they demonstrate that they've recycled and reused according to their demolition plan, they'll get that money back.
So I have a question. First, Adam, I think you saw your hand.
Yeah, how is that determined? What the
deposit
refundable deposit will be?
It's currently proposed at $1 per square foot with a minimum of $1,500.
Okay, great. That was my question as well. Anyone else? Okay.
Okay, and then this is my last slide on embodied carbon. Just in the past few months, we've gotten a lot of feedback and have started a lot of really interesting conversations with our community around embodied carbon. The importance of embodied carbon relative to the building codes is illustrated roughly in this graph, which shows operational energy in orange and then embodied energy in white. And embodied energy is just all the energy that goes into building the structure to begin with. And operational energy is all the energy that it takes to run the lights and run our computers and heat the building and cool the building.
Is that a per year basis, or what's the operational energy in?
The graph is just, energy per, or no, sorry, this is, so the first bar represents a building built in 1970.
Right.
And then the second bar is a building built a year later, and so on and so forth.
But the operational energy is shown as X and the embodied energy is shown as Y. But is operational energy on a per year basis or over a 20-year lifetime?
Per year.
Per year.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes a lot more sense because.
Right, sorry,
okay.
yeah, it didn't explain that very well. Yeah, so what the story is trying to tell is that as our energy codes get better and better, and we move in the direction of a net zero energy code, eventually that operational energy will continue to decrease until we net it out. And so what comes into focus as we look at this graph is that, you know, the operation or the embodied carbon that goes into building these buildings is really the next thing for us to start to focus on. So with that being said, with this code update, we're starting to address embodied carbon in two ways, I would say. One, as the previous slide explained, we're proposing that, you know, all demolition projects increase landfill diversion rates, and we're increasing the enforcement around that as well. And then two, we're also relaxing slightly the requirements for building renovations. It sort of ties into that alteration level discussion as well. And we're doing that because we have heard on occasion that people can't reuse a building because the building energy code requirements are so cumbersome that it's impossible to reuse this building. So we're trying to relax some of those requirements to take away any barriers to building reuse. And then as we move forward for future codes, there's a lot of work being done by city staff on this topic. Zero Waste, Kara Mertz from Zero Waste is here to represent Zero Waste. They've been working with consultants to conduct an urban metabolism study that looks at the life cycle of all building materials being consumed in Boulder, and we're working to develop policies and programs and educational outreach to start transitioning to a more circular economy, not just for buildings, but for material use across the city. And then I'll also just mention the hospital project. A lot of work's being done on the Alpine Balsam project that reflects these long-term goals. We're reusing several of the buildings there and converting them from our worst performing buildings into our best performing buildings. The buildings that we are taking down, we're working very carefully to learn as much as we can about taking those buildings down and diverting as much from the landfill as possible. We're hoping to hit diversion rates above 85% on that particular project. And it's our hope from the studies we're doing with CU and Zero Waste and these projects that will really inform future policy moving forward.
Adam has a question.
Not a question, just a statement. I want to make note that urban metabolism study is really, really cool. So when you have an opportunity, please look at it.
It is exceptionally cool.
So is this graph from that study?
No, sorry, I should have cited this graph. This is just a generic graph that was done by Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance.
Got it.
A lot of leading jurisdictions with Boulder and really across the globe, you know, we're working with a number of cities to figure out what our next policy steps are around embodied carbon. It's pretty complicated creating an embodied carbon analysis, figuring out what the bookends to that analysis look like, figuring out the data that goes into it. There's just a lot going on in the industry around this topic. Okay. And then I'll pass it back to Will for the last slide.
So in your memo, we had recommended an effective date for the implementation of these codes is April 1st. It's taken us longer than we originally anticipated to get to this point. Based on the feedback that we received from our external customers, we are now recommending that the effective date be July 1 of this year.
And it looks like that's what's on the blue sheet here that we have. Great, thank you. Adam?
I have a question regarding the date, actually.
Okay.
And this might be for Chris. Do you expect, with these changes, that there's going to be a rush on new applicants? And do you have a plan to deal with that since planning department is already sort of stretched thin?
Sure, and anytime we make a significant regulatory change, whether it's adoption of new building codes or a big fee change, we'll always see a spike of applications because that's a big timing piece for folks, but it's something we're used to, and as Will described, we typically give about a 6-month window. The idea is folks that are almost at the finish line of designing their building permits, designing their building to submit for building permits, they've designed it anticipating a certain set of rules. Folks that are further out, if they know that change is coming, they can plan for it. So we have applicants right now, some of which are working with Will already and Kristen already, anticipating that they're going to design their building to the new codes. We have other folks that are close to submitting for building permits. So that's why we're recommending the change to July 1st, is it's closer to what our standard practice is, and it won't also cause anyone to have to do a major redesign.
I have one more follow-up question.
Okay,
Adam,
go
do you have
ahead.
anything else? So just coming back to the outdoor heating thing, so was it a conscious decision to not include that in the commercial rules, or is it?
I wouldn't say it was a conscious decision. The intent behind the change was aligning with the county on this, and the county applies it only to residential projects, and that's kind of, we just sort of followed suit with the county on this. We could absolutely add it into the commercial code if that's what we want.
So maybe something to think about when we come back for discussion.
Okay. Mark?
I just want to go back to something we discussed earlier. Is there a policy basis for treating a 50,000 square foot condo project more leniently in terms of energy conservation than a 3,000 square foot house? It seems to me the impact of the former is greater, yet the requirements are lesser. And it may be just that's because we've always done it that way, but I'm asking, is there a policy rationale for doing it that way?
The residential requirements are set up based on square footage, and that sort of setup predates me a little bit. Oh, sorry. That direction to set the requirements up in terms of square footage, so more stringent requirements the larger the home is. It's my understanding that was to sort of discourage larger homes, to put in place something that encouraged and incentivized folks to move to build a smaller home.
My comment wasn't directed to disincentivizing larger residential projects, but they do have more of an impact, and I'm wondering why they're not being held to the same high standard we are going to hold individual residential structures to.
So, hi, Carolyn. Excuse me, Carolyn Nealon with Climate Initiatives Department. I'll take a shot at answering that. Okay. In our original, earlier memo from earlier last spring, we went through the cost analysis. And so it really comes down to when technology is ready, so that we're not overly burning these projects as well. So when we're talking about some of the larger homes, the technology has kept pace. When you eliminate the gas tap, the meter, you're basically, the analysis is showing you can build that home on par with what you would have if you were trying to do just a conventional natural gas furnace. When you start to get into the smaller units, we're still doing that analysis, and we want to do some more engagement. They're definitely on the pathway to get there, so it's really more a matter of timing. And when we're showing that we're not necessarily creating an undue financial burden and driving costs up while we're trying to accomplish our energy goals at the same time. So a little bit of it is when we bring certain property types into the code, they're all on the same pathway to get by 2030, so they would all be on par. So it's just a matter of timing at this point.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. So I guess it's time, is that the end of the presentation?
Right.
Great. So any more questions from council? So I guess it's time to open the public hearing. Okay. So we have 4 people for the public hearing. So I'll first call, so you'll get 3 minutes each because there are less than 15. So we'll call Alex Cassidy, and then Byron Fears, and then Mikkel Duffy. Is Alex here?
Good evening. A lot of new faces on council here. I've just got a few brief comments. I'm a commercial architect in the city of Boulder. I've been working on commercial projects here for over 20 years. And I understand the code adoption, and I love the Net 30 goals. Your outreach was great, Will and Kristen, and I know there were a bunch of other people that were involved in that, and I applaud that. To my knowledge, we've never had that before. So that was all great. I noticed a few weeks ago in the camera, there was an article about council eyeing support of small businesses. And what I wanted to point out is, and somebody mentioned it too just a few minutes ago, planning and development services being stretched thin. And so really what I wanted to talk about briefly is that review times on these small commercial projects, and these are projects where we're taking a commercial space in a strip mall, something like that, and we're putting a tenant into a space. These are small businesses. We used to have review times of a week or 2 weeks, and now our review times are 6 weeks. And in fact, I had a little project just recently, got comments back. I brought the comments in, and I was told, well, it's going to be another 6 weeks before we can respond to your comments. And so what I would say about that is that if you're going to implement new code and more code, you really have to support your staff with what they need to be able to enforce the code and get this stuff done in a timely manner, because otherwise you're just, a lot of these small businesses are getting chopped off at the knees by this. I mean, you know, the client that I'm working with right now has, he has been opening businesses in several different jurisdictions all over the country, and he's never seen anything like it, you know, how far we're being pushed out here. So I think that's the extent of what I have to say. The other thing, I mean, you know, the stretched thin piece, there is a long turn. Sometimes phone calls aren't returned, or they're returned really slowly. And what I get out of that is just that people on staff are stretched thin and they can't respond when there are questions. You know, we're trying to get answers. We're trying to help people. We're trying to facilitate. And it's really turning into a big challenge. So your consideration would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Next is Byron Fears, then Mikkel Duffy, and then James Feeney.
Good evening. I'm Byron Fears, co-owner of Simplicity Tiny Homes located in Lyons, Colorado. I wish to encourage you to adopt Appendix Q, but also include movable tiny homes. Our Front Range, Boulder County has such an intense need for attainable housing. Movable tiny homes is that. We build homes for $65,000 to $150,000. That is attainable. Most people that I know right now, unless they're earning $200,000 or more, can't buy a home in Boulder County or a lot of the Front Range. A movable tiny home provides the opportunity for housing for people that are in desperate need of it. Mentioned was inspections. We're located in Lyons. We adhere to very strict building codes. We build to Appendix Q already. We're inspected by Pacific West Associates, which inspects homes throughout the entire country, primarily in movable tiny homes and RVs. You asked earlier about Lyons. How could Lyons adopt this? When I brought Pacific West Associates to Lyons to answer the questions about the stringent building codes that we build to, is when Lyons finally said, aha, we can do that. Now, a movable tiny home, it is a full-on home. It just has wheels on it. It doesn't matter if it really has wheels underneath it or a Ferris wheel underneath it. They can be removed. They can be placed on foundations. All the homes we build, the trailer frame is the subfloor framing. We already have brackets built in the subfloor framing to be placed on foundations. The impact on a neighborhood is far reduced when you can just roll a tiny home into a yard and your neighbors don't have to put up with the construction for 3, 6 months, a year, 2 years. You know, it's a very sensible and humanistic way of building. Inspectors could come from Boulder to Lyons, a full 15-minute drive, and inspect every single step of our build. No different than building or driving from North Boulder to South Boulder to inspect. We're working at trying to have attainable housing so people can live in a more sustainable manner to help promote a more sustainable future on our planet. Boulder has been like the leading poster child for years for planning, for zoning, for green building. Movable tiny homes is just like one with that completely. And to remove that from a possibility, I think, is absurd for Boulder because it's not really living to the standard that Boulder has preached for the 40 years I've been involved with Boulder. And to ignore that, I think, is just absurd. I'd like to thank you very much for considering Appendix Q.
Thank you, Byron. Mikhail Duffy, James Feeney, and Lynn Siegel.
Good evening, Council. My name is Mikhail. I use they pronouns. I'm the Education and Program Manager for Out Boulder County. I'm commenting tonight on the updates to the bathroom codes and want to just say that this is a really important update as far as accessibility for our queer, trans, and non-binary population. It's also an important move for parents with young children of a different gender as well as folks with caregivers of a different gender than them for accessibility. I also want to highlight that the multi-use option is a really important move forward, and it also benefits groups such as school groups that are on field trips. Also, the importance of the signage not highlighting gender, I think, is really important, and I commend Boulder's movements to make this a smart and sensible change that's considering all these factors to not highlight gender in the signage and rather just keep it more professional, saying restroom or toilet, as to make sure that folks who have a different gender are not being specifically highlighted, or that there's not unwanted or an additional attention being brought to folks who are interacting in what is traditionally a gendered space but is no longer. So I think that it's actually a better move, and I support the move to avoid gendered language in the signage, and speaking as representative for Out Boulder in that. While I'm also up here, wanted to say that this is a safety issue. Thank you for moving forward on this. And I also want to highlight that the Boulder Public Library is a really good example of a successful multi-stall restroom, and they're having their ribbon cutting this Thursday morning at 9 a.m. So I want to let folks know that, in case you don't, that would be a great way to check this out in action, how this is working, and that this is not a new phenomenon, though it might seem new to this area. And also, Out Boulder County is here as a resource. I like to highlight that every time I come and address the council, that we are here as a resource. If you have any other questions around what this means, the context of it, first I would recommend you go to the ribbon cutting on Thursday morning, but also feel free to reach out to me or any of our staff at Out Boulder County. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mikhail?
Well, I just wanted to thank you and the other folks at Out Boulder for the collaboration on this. I feel it seems like we've gotten to a really good place, and I appreciate
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're always here for whatever it is. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mikhail. James Feeney and then Lynn Siegel.
James Feeney from North Boulder. Carbon monoxide alarms. For the council members that don't know, in that housekeeping set of amendments, one of the typical things to do is to modify the standard International Building Code and the International Fire Code to allow a disclaimer for liability for failures to do inspections. And it kind of strikes me as an attempt to modify the charter requirement to enforce the ordinances by ordinance. And so we've got, again, this principle that we're going to create a requirement for fire and building, specifically in this case the carbon monoxide alarms, and then we're going to throw it all away by claiming that we have no liability if we fail to inspect and people die. And unfortunately, for one reason or another, we still have carbon monoxide poisoning events that happen along the Front Range, and including in Boulder. So I would like you to consider whether or not it's really that important to be different than the standard for the International Building Code and the International Fire Code that we have to have this exemption. It kind of sounds sleazy to me. Obviously, we appreciate the advantage of not being liable for a failure to inspect, but I think they ought to do any inspections anyway. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Lynn Siegel.
Lynn Siegel, Mountain Heights. What was not intuitively clear to me about the sprinkler situation is ADUs that are pre-existing, and this is an iterative process, but I can't ask Will things. So, like, the way this whole process works has problems, as that study indicated of the staff and council and everyone. But just saying, pre-existing ADUs before the new ADU rules that don't have a sprinkler system, do they have to install a sprinkler system? I can't ask you, Will, because it's in public and I can't ask things now. So great. Okay. Huh? Yeah. Well, he can't answer, you know. I didn't notice any demolition separation of materials for 311, and I've been on to them like from the beginning, so I don't get that. Where's the demolition? I'm going to get your card before you go, and I'm going to find out what's going on there, because I've been up to that site many times. I live around there, and I haven't seen anything but, you know, shooting out the windows. They've just blighted the whole place. They've just trashed it, and there's nothing like this going on there. Swim pools, you want to talk about it has to be solar. Well, also include a time for neighborhood kids to swim in those pools, because pools use up a lot of embodied energy, and we can't have many of them in Boulder. So that should be a better exchange, even more so than solar. And I also don't like just, you can, because you're solar, because you're doing these, you know, good things for the environment, that means you can overbuild. Nope, that isn't the way it goes. And I really liked your chart of the operational versus embodied energy. That's really cool.
Great, thank you, Lynn. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, with that, we will close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion. Before we do, I do just want to clear one thing up. Mikhail, if you're still here, the ribbon cutting for the restroom renovation in the library will be Friday at 10:05 a.m. So it's not Thursday, but it will be Friday at 10:05. So anyone who'd like to come, all council members are invited.
Great artist. Great artist.
Okay, so for discussion, I thought we would bring it back and we can chunk it down into parts. I think maybe one way to start this would be to talk about the non-major changes and just see if there's anybody that has any concern with any of the things that weren't highlighted, because there's like 9 different codes involved here. And so any council members have any issues with points that weren't highlighted but are contained in those codes? Okay, great. I have here just a couple of quick notes about this. We had a question about outside heating for commercial projects, including condos and hotels, I assume, and apartment buildings. And then Mark had raised condo questions and energy codes, and I think I understood the answer, but we might want to come back to that. And then I have Appendix Q. I figured there would be some discussion with that. Is there any other subject around this that, Junie?
Thank you. I would like to learn a little bit more about the movable versus the permanent foundation, and what are the safety concerns to not having the movable, and also what are some of the environmental incentives? And I think that's probably part of the questions that were brought up earlier.
And that's in Appendix Q, meaning that's the Appendix Q is the shorthand for the tiny home.
Thank you.
right? So I think we need to address those very issues within the Appendix Q. So anything else besides those items? Okay, great. Rachel, do you have something else?
Yeah, I'm not sure yet.
Okay, great. We can keep going. So why don't we start with the outside heating for commercial projects? Aaron, I heard you bring something up about that. Do you want to have that discussion tonight or bring it back later?
Well, I guess I might ask staff maybe to think about that a little bit. It just seems that like we've seen projects with outdoor heated pools. And so just wonder if it would be worth adding a similar provision to the commercial requirements. I'm thinking primarily around pools. Like, I wouldn't want to make sense if somebody wanted to put an outdoor heating element out after they constructed a building. I wouldn't want to try to make them put a solar panel on just for some little thing like that. But the pool thing struck me. So, I mean, how large a change do you think that would be?
I think it's a reasonable change. I think we could use the same language. The only concern I'm thinking of in my head is around scalability. If it's a really, really large pool, I'm thinking like Scott Carpenter or some of these really large pools, there might not physically be enough square footage for the solar coverage. So the scalability is the only thing that's really a concern to me. But we could look into that and make sure that we have a solution for that kind of project, and it might be the Energy Impact Offset Fund or something like that. But we could certainly look to expand the residential provision to commercial projects. And I think in 90% of the cases, it should be no problem. It's just those few cases that I'm thinking about where it could present a problem.
And would the scope of that be doable, like for third reading, or do you feel like that's a larger effort?
I think it's doable for third reading.
And just to clarify, Scott Carpenter is not a heated pool. Is it the one that we're building?
Scott Carpenter would be.
It would be nice.
You're right.
But I don't believe it is, no.
Yeah.
No, I believe it is. I believe, there are definitely boilers that work to heat.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, all right, we'll have to learn more about that. Okay. Anyway,
Okay, I've got Mark next and then Mirabai.
Further to Aaron's point, how does the new code treat fire pits? Fire pits, outdoor fire pits.
Fire pits are illegal in Boulder.
I mean, gas heated?
The gas appliances, I think he's talking about.
Yeah, gas heated fire pits.
I don't think they're allowed. I mean, they're not. They're not.
I've sat in front of some.
Oh.
So
they're all over Boulder.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that they're not illegal, though. So, Dave, they're not.
We're a community of criminals.
We knew that.
No, sir. So what's your specific question? How do we treat gas fire pits?
How is the new code going to treat those? And now I'm hearing that they're all illegal.
No. Gas, propane fire pits are not considered open burning. Those are open flame. They're treated through the plumbing code and the mechanical code and installed in accordance with those code. What's illegal is open burning in the city of Boulder, which is burning wood, trash, things like that. But gas, they don't present the fire embers or the sparks that go into the air. So we do have those, and as I said, they're regulated by plumbing code and mechanical code.
And the new code does not address that as
the new energy code.
Yeah, the energy code.
Yeah, the overall energy code would pull that in because any usage of gas on the site will be pulled into that energy use index. That there's a score that the building has to hit, and so the gas usage that's associated with that would also play into that score. So if there's excessive gas heating, that's going to show up in that score, and it's actually going to be more heavily weighted because gas usage hits the UI score harder than electric usage.
And for a 3,000 square foot house that has to be net zero, does that effectively bar them from installing a gas heated fire pit?
I'm going to let Caroline speak to this.
So within the solar regulations that govern us at the state, you can go 120% of your electrical usage. So it doesn't effectively ban gas appliances per se within the home. What Kristen was alluding to is you cannot hit the net zero score with heating. So whether it's your space heating or water heating, that really has to move to electric. With that 20% probably covers your gas fire pit, or you can still put in your gas stove if you want to, We can talk about that
Or
at a later
built-in.
date, why you don't. But so small, you can have your decorative gas fireplace still. Like, we're not touching those choices, but it's really the heating.
Okay, thank you.
Mirabai.
So just talk to me a little bit about the heated driveways and whatnot. If someone were to do those, they would need to offset it with solar or whatnot, but the only thing I'm just thinking of is, and I don't know how many of these we actually have in Boulder. I highly doubt it's an epidemic of them. But if you are, more in your senior years or disabilities, like my grandparents, they're not going to go shovel their driveway, so they might have installed one of those. But I don't want, so again, and a lot of those people at that age are living on their pensions or Social Security. So if they're then having to go spend more money to offset, but then again, it would cost money to implement that too. So, I mean, are we having major issues with that, or is that kind of just going to all wash out? It's just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, we don't see a ton of these, but especially the snow melt systems, we really don't see a ton of those anymore. Most people choose to just get a shoveling service, I think, over actually installing the snow melt system. It's I think what we see a lot more of is the heated pool and the heated spa and that kind of outdoor heating.
Okay, cool, thanks.
So I had a question following up on the concern with scalability for outdoor pool heating. You mentioned the Energy Impact Offset Fund. So that raises the question, do subscriptions to solar gardens and so on, is that part of the way that you can achieve net zero if you have, or your energy rating that's required, if you have an outdoor heated pool, would you be able to offset that through solar garden membership?
You could potentially. The way we've proposed the code currently is that you have to first demonstrate that you couldn't do that on site. It's technically infeasible to do it on site. If you can demonstrate that there are reasons that it's technically infeasible on site, you can then pursue community solar to meet those requirements.
Okay, great. So I think, Aaron, the way I heard your question was, could we implement these energy codes by third reading? I mean, the outdoor heated appliances or pools or driveways, can we have a proposal for that to look at third reading?
I think so. Feedback, Will, do you have thoughts on this?
It would have to go to fourth reading. So why don't we do this? It's hard to have them answer right up here. Since it has to come to third reading anyway, if they can do it, we'll put it into third reading, and then we'll have to go to fourth. If not, we'll explain why in the memo for third reading.
Okay, that works. That sounds good. Does that work? Okay, very good. Next, I have Mark. Mark, you had asked some questions about condos, and I think the way I understood the answer was because condos are separate units and they have separate appliances, that the heat pumps and the heating systems don't make sense yet at that small scale. Does that satisfy your question, or do you want to talk more about that?
Well, for instance, the new condominium at Broadway and Balsam has 5 or 6 units, all approximately 3,000 square feet. And my inquiry was as to whether it's a good idea to have a separate standard for energy conservation for those as opposed to a freestanding house. Those are very large units, and the answer may be there's a good reason. I just wasn't quite clear what it was, other than the fact we've always done it that way.
Yeah, I mean, those projects aren't getting a great deal of relief. The energy code requirements are still quite stringent for those projects. They're just hard to compare apples to apples. It's hard to compare the energy use index on the commercial projects to the ERI, the energy rating index of a home. Those two scoring indexes that we use in the industry are hard to get a side-by-side comparison on. But as Caroline explained, really the goal for all projects, in the next 3 code cycles is to get them all to net zero energy. So really it is a matter of timing.
If we get there, I'm fine.
And Aaron? And I'll just note, I mean, Mark, like that particular project, sort of very large units. But I mean, my understanding is that if you have a condo project with 40 units in a building, that the kind of per unit energy usage is much lower on average than for freestanding homes as well. So it's another thing to consider.
True.
Okay, are we good with that? Can we move on? Mark, are you okay? Okay. Great. And then what I think may be the longer conversation for the evening is Appendix Q, which is tiny homes. And I would ask Tom or maybe one of you can review Planning Board. Didn't Planning Board recommend that these be fixed foundation homes, the tiny homes?
That was staff's recommendation. Planning Board agreed with that.
Planning Board agreed with that. Okay, very good. So why don't we launch the discussion of tiny homes? Who would like to start us off?
Well, I have one particular thing. I would just, I would like to get a confirmation that you could use one as an ADU, because I was looking at Appendix Q and it references single family, so I'm not sure if it's fully compatible, because if we need to change a few words in Appendix Q in order to make sure you could use them as an ADU, I'd like to make sure we do that.
Aaron, yeah, I think we envision that you could use this section of the building code if you were to want to build a detached ADU that is 400 square feet. You could use this if we were to adopt it. Yeah.
Right. So that's glad to hear. And I just, maybe, Tom, you can just 100% confirm from a legal standpoint, just before third reading. But great, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Great. Janie? Yeah, I think that would be good to start the conversation.
Thanks. I just wanted to know a little bit more, because you mentioned Planning Board wanting it to be on fixed foundation. But if we are, what can we do? How about a hybrid system? Because you mentioned the utilities. Is it not possible to have utilities if it's on movable wheels? And you also mentioned that it wouldn't be, what's the word? When for enforcement purposes, it needs to be fixed. So how can we make it more accessible for people to have access to tiny homes? Because I think requiring that it's on fixed foundation makes it a little bit more restrictive.
So the fixed foundation and the connection to permanent utilities is the intent of the code, in my opinion, and to add those explicitly was just for a clarification. Council could amend that code if they chose to. My biggest concern was to make sure that council was aware that this was an option now for the first time in the residential code. And I apologize if I didn't make it clear that the goal is to have them on permanent foundation. The codes do recognize what's known as third-party special inspectors, but they have to be pre-approved based on their credentials. So I couldn't just automatically say, yes, this firm would be approved. I would have to do some research and find out who this company is and what their program looks like. But third-party special inspectors can be approved. And the connection to permanent utilities is the way that the code's written. The code's not written in a way that we have quick disconnect utilities for our dwelling units.
Rachel?
And I'd just like to hear more about the process, because I think you said this is kind of, or Tom said this is step one of allowing tiny homes to be legal in Boulder, if I'm understanding correctly. So if we do want, as a council, to look at having them not fixed foundation and not fixed utilities, what would the process of that look like? And when would we be looking at that?
So I'm having trouble understanding. So something that doesn't have fixed utilities and doesn't have a foundation is a trailer. So
Well, I think what happens is tiny homes can be moved, and so you can, be in a town for 1 year or part of the year, and then you can tie them down. Again, I am definitely not an expert on this, but my understanding is they can be more mobile, and that there is a convenience factor. And we had one person sharing about red tape in the city and making things harder rather than easier. So if we want to incentivize affordable housing and the ease of setting up a tiny home, again, not knowing enough about it, I just wonder what is the process for if we do want to move in that direction. And I understand that's how Lions is doing it, so that's part of what makes me think there must be some benefit to it.
Well, the gentleman who testified talked about building them elsewhere, moving them to a site, and then putting them on a foundation. So he wasn't, I'm not sure what Lyons does. That would be different than having them on wheels and attaching some other form of utility to them. So you could allow that if you wanted by making a small change in the code. You might also then require the inspection that the gentleman also talked about to make sure that they were good. But so again, the challenge is that they would be allowed, we think, as ADUs, but nothing else. And so if you really want to enable that, that's a bigger conversation that you would want to add to your work plan to talk about how we would allow tiny homes like some other cities have.
Quick question.
Mark, and then, are you done for the moment?
I can be done for the moment.
Oh,
go ahead, Mark, after you.
Mark and then Aaron.
Can somebody tell me what the vote of the planning board was in approving this recommendation?
They recommended approval of all of the amendments as they were presented here.
No, the tiny homes proposal that was endorsed by staff and approved by the planning board. Do we know what the vote on that was?
I believe it was unanimous, if I remember.
I think it was unanimous.
I simply note that at our last meeting, we gave great weight to a unanimous vote by a planning board that has many diverse opinions on it, and I would be inclined to, at least initially, give them that weight on this issue as well.
Aaron, and then Mary. Rachel, is one on.
So I'm just trying to get us into, when we say fixed foundation, I mean, I get that that's different from being on wheels, right? And that's fine. But let's, in the scenario the gentleman was talking about, so it's pre-assembled in another location, there's a special inspection, I guess that's possible, you're saying, for the remote inspector could make sure you're complying with all the building codes. And then you bring it in and then you put it on a pad and then hook up water and sewer. Is that allowable? You know, you kind of put it on a pad, so it's not like you can place it after the fact, or?
So as I read the proposed code, that would not be allowable. The proposed code says tiny homes shall be constructed on permanent foundations. So I would read that as requiring that the construction actually occur on the foundation. If you remove the construction on permanent foundations, I think it might accommodate what the gentleman suggested.
Maybe shall be located on permanent foundation.
Or fixed foundation.
Or just shall be on permanent foundations connected to utilities. My caveat is it's always dangerous to do this kind of thing on the fly. And if we're going to bring this back, we might want to bring back language that if you want to allow that, you might also want to require inspections of some sort by some certified third-party inspector, which the gentleman also was talking about doing.
Okay, so I've got Mary and then Rachel.
Well, and just as, Mark, you made a great point, but maybe just a small tweak while still getting the fundamental intentions might be interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mary?
So I heard the term quick disconnect utilities thrown out, and that made me wonder if that means electrical would have to be set up such that you could quickly disconnect your home utility from electrical. So wouldn't that implicate a system that would have to be put in place by Xcel at the moment? I mean, or does something like that exist?
I'm not aware of anything like that, but there's a lot of things I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything. I guess the conversation would have to be defined on what we mean by movable. I mean, how often? You know, is there a duration limit or anything like that?
Well, Rachel just said a little while ago, so that people can be in a place for a year and then move on, go somewhere else and connect up somewhere else. So I was just curious because I heard quick disconnect made me think utilities, made me think, well, Xcel, and I mean, how does all that, all it made me think was that it's a lot more complicated than it sounds at first blush.
Rachel, you have something you want to follow up?
Just in terms of planning board, my understanding is that they didn't add this in. It was, they accepted staff adding it in, so clarifying.
So Adam?
Yeah, and I double-checked the vote count just so everyone knows it was 5-0 with 2 absent.
Okay. I'm going to put myself on the stack here. I just want to make a few distinctions. RVs are quick disconnects, right? So you can have RVs which you can pull into a RV facility and you can hook up power, you can hook up sewer and water. And so there are ways to have what's essentially a home. You know, an RV more or less is a tiny home when you get right down to it. It has stoves and bathrooms and bedrooms and kind of the whole thing. So I think we want to make a distinction at first. I think it's one thing if you want to transport a prefab home and drop it onto a fixed foundation and make a permanent connection to utilities. And I think that's mostly what we've been talking about. And I think if you think about what we're talking about tonight, it's building codes. And building codes kind of imply a sense of permanence. And it could be prefab, and then it comes to a place, and like we're doing in Ponderosa, that's a whole bunch of stuff that could be prefab, come to a place, get put on a fixed foundation, permanent utilities, and it'll stay there for a long time. I think there's another flavor of tiny homes that people are favoring, which looks a lot like an RV, you know, and that's where I think we heard that if it's going to be mobile, like sit on wheels type of mobile, that's not going to be governed by the building code. And I think you brought up a good point. That would be something that we would maybe look at later. But if we take what will end up on a fixed foundation, and Tom, if we make that small change that you talked about, not constructed on a fixed foundation, but located or whatever on a fixed foundation, then I think if we approve these codes with tiny homes, we've enabled a new class of construction in Boulder. If we want to come back and talk about mobile, where they're intended to move once a year, so they're going to stay on their wheels or be able to slide on and off. I think that's a different thing, and I don't think it's governed by this so much. So I wouldn't be opposed to perhaps coming back to it, but I'm not sure it's what we're talking about tonight. I think tonight's mostly something intended to land on a fixed foundation and stay for a number of years. So I would be inclined to agree with what Planning Board did, approve it with the small change that Tom suggested so that it can be prefab and can land on the fixed foundation. And then if we want to return to it, we return to mobile tiny homes as a separate subject.
Good. That's good.
Any other comments? Yep. Bob?
Chris, I wonder if you could, Mr. Cassidy raised a point about staffing and support. I wonder, you touched on this briefly at the retreat last week, and I wonder if you could just speak for a minute about staffing and support on front desk and access to folks.
Sure, and I appreciate Mr. Cassidy bringing that issue up, and it is an issue of our customers right now related to our review times in planning and development services. Right now, we are several weeks behind in our reviews, and it's part of what we talked about at the retreat is this year is really a focused effort for all of us in planning and development services to do some pretty serious reimagining of how we get our work done. To be able to improve those review times. And so that's a focus of ours. Right now we know that things are not clicking the way that they should. And that is our focus for this year, is to really dig into each of our processes, understand what the sticking points are, and work towards improving those. We know we won't be able to reinvent all of our processes this year because we have a lot of them, but we want to try and target as many of the high value ones as much as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Aaron?
I could put a motion on the table.
Okay. If you want to do that, I would just say I've collected 3 amendments. Okay, great. Perfect.
So I'll move that we adopt Ordinance 8366, amending Title 10 structures by adopting and modifying all kinds of building codes and setting forth related details. With one particular amendment, which is to change the effective date of July 1st, 2020, and then to ask staff to come back at third reading with potential language for including in the commercial codes an offset for outdoor heating, specifically pools, but maybe other things. I'm going to look to your recommendation. And then also language allowing for tiny homes to be constructed off-site in a well-inspected manner and then placed on a permanent foundation. Anything else?
That was it.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I believe that Aaron captured the 3 that I was tracking. Tom, do you have any
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I assume there's a show of hands. So all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? So it's unanimous. Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Can I just say briefly, though, thank you, staff, for, I know this is actually an enormous lift. There are so many different codes, and we are right on the forefront of these matters in this country, and it's due in great part to the fantastic work of our staff in collaboration with our local building professionals. So thanks to everyone.
And I just want to note that we had 4 people speak at the public hearing, so I think that's a sign that the outreach was really, really good. So thank you.
Yep. Thanks to everybody. This is great work. Okay, on to our second public hearing, which is consideration of a motion to adopt ordinance. I'm sorry, Lynette, you want to do this?
Second reading of ordinance 8376 relating to tobacco regulations.
Very good.
So I'll be presenting this.
Very good.
So a little background. On September 17th, Council passed Ordinance 8340, which was the regulatory ordinance involving vaping. The ordinance banned sale of tobacco to persons under 21. It required a government-issued ID to purchase tobacco. It banned the sale of flavored vaping products, and it limited the number of vaping products that could be sold at one time. On Election Day, the voters approved Measure 2G, authorizing a tax of up to 40% on retail sales price of electronic smoking devices, including cartridges, refills, et cetera, that ordinance just authorized the tax. It did not implement it. So to impose the tax, we need another ordinance. So we have Ordinance 8376, which does the following. It imposes the tax effective July 1st, 2020, creates a licensing requirement for the sale of tobacco products effective January 1st, 2021. It authorizes a fee for license up to $500. It closes a loophole that allowed at least one retailer to sell flavors and nicotine separately and therefore avoid the ban. It requires that government issue ID be valid and not expired, and it cleans up some language in the definitions without changing the meaning. There's no intent to change. So, the proposed tax, staff is recommending that council impose it at the 40% that was authorized by the ballot. My recollection is that council spent a lot of time arriving at that number and that it was a very carefully chosen number, so I didn't feel that staff should recommend anything else. The tax on the ballot measure dedicated the revenues to the administrative cost of the tax, implementing, administrating, and enforcement of a licensing program, health promotion, including substance abuse prevention and smoking cessation, and then a provision that allows the remainder to go to the general fund for purposes of general government. Licensing, the council's discussion with respect to licensing was that licensing would be supported by a tax if it passed. The tax passed. Of course, the fee will also support licensing. Generally, all licensing programs are self-supporting, so we would intend that the fee support the licensing program. The fee, as I said, was set is authorized up to $500. Since we don't have any experience in knowing how many licenses there are, we actually have very little idea about how many people sell tobacco in the city of Boulder. So we've estimated that $500 seems a reasonable amount. It may be less depending on what we actually need, because fees actually have to be related to the cost of the program. The city licenses the sale of both alcohol and marijuana. It seems to make sense that there would be licensing for tobacco. So I said the tax would pay for it. There has to be a gap between the imposition of the tax and requiring licensing so that we have some revenue to actually pay for the FTEs we're going to need to do the licensing. So the proposal is the tax would be effective July 1st and licensing would be effective January 1st of 2021. The cleanup, so there was one business that was actually selling before we did this liquids that were a flavor and a nicotine separate. Since our code only applied to nicotine flavored, it didn't apply to them. Those things that they sell, anything that's used in a vaping product under FDA rules has to be labeled as potentially containing nicotine. So all we've done is add a provision of the code that prohibits the sale of things that potentially contain nicotine, even if they don't. The enforcement folks were concerned that we didn't require that the government issue ID be valid and not expired. So we put in that language, and then the definitions, that there's wording changes. There's no intention to make any changes. Questions?
Question from council? Seeing none, shall we open a public hearing?
Lynn Siegel. You're just Mountain Heights. I think that this is what happened with the vaping thing. I came in downstairs and asked these people that were talking about vaping. They said that for every cigarette smoker that's get averted by vaping, there are 80 people, 80, that start vaping. So I support 100% tax and no vape. Actually, no, I don't support a tax because there should not be vaping at all. Those odds are ridiculous. 80 people starting vaping for every one person that cessates smoking because they have the option of vaping. It's a numbers game. No way. I don't support the tax, not because I don't support a huge tax, but because I don't support vaping at all, ever, in this community. Case closed.
Thank you, Lynn. If no one else is wanting to speak, then we'll close the public hearing, bring the matter back to council. Adam?
I know this is kind of crazy, but Tom, does it say that the person on the ID has to be the person who is present? Because, you know, that's an issue, and I've had my fair share of experience.
I have to check, Adam.
Isn't that the definition of identification?
Yeah, but there's a lot of ways to have an identification that's not your own.
While we're waiting on Tom, any other points of discussion here? Yes, I'll weigh in while we're waiting. It was a clear vote. The people voted to impose this tax and to impose these regulations. It is something that is very, very much a scourge on our youth as far as people getting hooked on nicotine and then going on to cigarettes or even not going on to cigarettes. This is a nationwide movement. We just happen to be a few months before a lot of the stuff nationwide. Tom, do you have an answer?
Yeah, it does require that it be the purchaser's ID.
Great.
It has to show the purchaser's age and identity.
Okay, so we're implementing the will of the voters and tweaking a few loopholes with this measure. If there's no more comments, does someone want to put a motion on the table?
Is this where you read the whole thing?
Well, you can just say as displayed on the board or in the
Oh, okay.
if you want, or if you want to read it.
I don't want to read it. I move to adopt ordinance 8376 as displayed on the board.
Second.
Okay, we'll give that to Rachel. So, you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I think this is really important, not only for our community, but to set a precedent in surrounding communities. This was a thing that came up in the consortium of cities recently, and we were clear leaders on it, and I think it's important that Boulder remains that way. So I really appreciate, hopefully, a vote in the affirmative.
Rachel?
Yep, I have kids who are 15, 21, and 23. They're in the thick of this, the demographic that's being hit by this epidemic. So I'm really proud of Boulder for being out front on this. It is a societal epidemic at this point, huge health and safety. So huge support.
Aaron and then Mark.
I just wanted to thank the activists in the community who've worked really hard on this issue and brought it to our attention last year, as well as the folks at Boulder County Public Health who also worked very hard on this.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm cognizant that there are a few small businesses that will be adversely impacted by this, but the health issues are so significant, so fundamental, and the problem is so large at this point that there's really, for me, no option. I think this is a very important piece of legislation, and it deserves support.
Great. Anyone else? Okay.
This is a roll call vote. We start with Councilmember Young.
Yes.
Brockett.
Aye.
Friend.
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Nagel.
Aye.
Swetlick.
Yes.
Wallach.
Aye.
Weaver.
Aye.
Yates.
Let's make it unanimous. Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so with that passed unanimously. Good job, everyone, on that.
Your next item is Alpine Balsam implementation.
So I don't know if you all have met Amanda Beavis Cole before. She's been our Alpine Balsam project manager for 2 years, maybe, for a while. So she'll be presenting tonight on the City-County Working Group and other implementation efforts. Oh, along with Assistant City Manager and Interim Planning Director Chris Meschuk. So who goes first?
Thank you.
Amanda.
All right, Amanda.
Can you all hear me okay? Good evening, Council. My name is Amanda Beavis Cole, and I'm the Alpine Balsam Project Manager. I'm joined tonight by Chris Meschuk, Interim Planning Director and Assistant City Manager, and we're here tonight to present an overview of the Alpine Balsam implementation and City-County Working Group. I wanted to leave time tonight for questions and discussion, so I've condensed the presentation to main points and will be happy to cover any questions for things not covered in the presentation. Tonight's information might be newer to some of you and a refresher for others. Either way, we wanted to acknowledge that this is an exciting time in the transition we're making from the planning phase to implementation. The city purchased the Boulder Community Health, or BCH, property in 2015. Since then, the city has accomplished multiple planning efforts and other milestones, including the vision plan in 2017, the Brenton renovation in 2018, and the BCH move-out and area plan acceptance in 2019. The next phase is the implementation of the area plan, and the purpose of this phase is to realize the vision for Alpine Balsam in alignment with the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, or the BVCP, and the area plan. So far during the implementation phase, we are on track on all of the area plan goals, including affordable housing, sustainability, city facilities, and land use. On the next couple of slides, I plan to summarize the major uses identified in the plan and the implementation activities. The area plan includes a very colorful map that's also in your memo packet. I'm going to walk us briefly through the map as a means of explaining both what's in the area plan and how we're implementing it. As a reminder, the land use changes for nearby areas weren't included in the final plan and hasn't been included in the 2020 work plan. We think that moving through the analysis and lessons on the city-owned site will prepare us for revisiting the full area plan post-2020. The area plan identified 2 major uses for the site: affordable housing and civic office space. The affordable housing primarily occupies the northern half of the main block, and the color variations that you see designate different height, density, and expectations for housing. The western parcel is identified as High Density Residential 1, or HDR1, which translates to 2 or 3 story townhomes or apartments. The north central block will be HDR2 and is envisioned as 3-story apartment type building that includes significant open space and a welcoming ground level activation. The northeastern block of the main block will be mixed use 2, and the intent of the area plan is that the parcel is primarily housing with a retail or services ground floor. Finally, the southern central block was adopted in the area plan as a flex use, either as residential or county office space. On the next slide, I'll discuss more details on the City-County Working Group and describe the group's recommendation that the criteria of county office space here cannot be met. If City Council agrees with this recommendation, the next step will be to follow the area plan's designation for this parcel as HDR3, likely to be 4-story mid-rise apartment building with substantial amount of meaningful and usable open space at grade. These residential parcels are envisioned to house a variety of income levels, rental and ownership units, and potentially permanently supportive housing to further the city's affordable housing goals. Developing housing is a multi-year process. We are beginning with physical and financial testing to understand feasibility and potential options that are available, as well as evaluating the delivery options that may lead us to use a master development approach like we've done in the past at the Holiday Neighborhood and Boulder Junction. The City-County Working Group was established in November 2019 to assess the feasibility of relocating county facilities to Alpine Balsam and conduct analysis to determine if the area plan criteria could be met. The working group identified parking as a key aspect to analyze, and the group discovered significant challenges to meet the parking demand with a limited supply, even after exploring parking solutions on the screen, including potential reduction of county square footage, off-site parking with the shuttle service, enhanced transportation demand management, on-street parking, and additional floors of parking on the existing structure and as part of the county's redevelopment. The results of this analysis told us that in a best-case scenario, while adding a level of parking to the existing structure and including a ground floor parking level to the county building, the county likely could only achieve 55% of their square footage needs. The working group decided to recommend that for these reasons, the criteria for relocating county facilities could not be met. The communication in attachment A of your memo packet also recommended future collaboration to reconvene a working group to guide community process at a future time, depending on the county's progress in their relocation analysis. Multiple members of City Council contributed as working group members, and we'd like to provide an opportunity at the end of the presentation to add their perspective. The southeastern parcel of the main block is where the current medical office pavilion is located, on the corner of Alpine and Broadway. This will be the future home of Consolidated City Services and will add to the recently renovated Brenton building to create what we've been calling the city's western campus that includes a welcoming plaza and open space. The design process for the pavilion will begin in 2020, followed by site review and permitting, and it is anticipated that construction will begin in 2022 with occupancy in 2024. The affordable housing and city office that fulfill the vision of the area plan are supported by other urban design and public infrastructure, including the functional and aesthetic greenway that will serve as flood mitigation for the site along Balsam, dedicated open space for linear parks and green areas, a mobility hub, new pedestrian connections, and the existing shared parking structure on the corner of Alpine and Broadway. Some of the public infrastructure, such as linear parks, the mobility hub, and utilities and transportation connections will be designed further in the process once we've identified a housing development partner. In the meantime, engineering the flood mitigation solution is occurring in 2020 to prepare for a conditional letter of map revision, or a CLOMR, which gives us permission from FEMA to construct the greenway and will ultimately lead to revising the floodplain through a letter of map revision, or a LOMR. This is a multi-year process that is essential both to use federal funding for the affordable housing development as well as remove the pavilion from the 100-year floodplain. Now that I've described the uses and what the site will be like in the future, I'd like to summarize many of the steps that are underway or beginning this year that have to occur before development. We have begun a phased interior deconstruction that begins in the pavilion and will shift to the hospital once we've completed environmental review requirements for HUD. Exterior deconstruction of the hospital will begin in 2021. The area plan identifies changes to land use and zoning for the site. These changes will occur during the midterm Boulder Valley Comp Plan update this year. Ahead of development, we'd like to identify ways to implement the area plan's access and mobility goals, and included in this effort is the exploration of a general improvement district similar to the Boulder Junction model to fund future transportation demand management and parking costs. The city has already accomplished energy goals on the site with the renovation of the Brenton building to be a near net zero building and the preservation of all concrete structures such as the pavilion that represent more than 40% of the total square footage on the site and the most embodied energy. Continuing this work, staff will be evaluating energy-specific development goals and exploring creative and advantageous solutions that further the city's climate commitment. I've included this high-level summary of the timeline in your memo packet. All project activities are either underway or beginning in 2020, and we're at the beginning stages of a multi-year implementation process. As this project moves forward, we will be keeping a close eye on the interrelated nature of different activities. As you can see, the red arrows represent some examples of how interrelated this project is and indicates the importance of timely decision-making. This is an area we'll be discussing more with council as decisions are ready to be made. City Council will continue to be updated and included in the implementation of Alpine Balsam. We intend to include funding requests in the 2021 budget development, and the City Council will be involved in key policy decisions for the housing and overall site redevelopment. In addition, the community will be updated on the progress of the site and can sign up for Alpine Balsam newsletter on our city's website. There will be opportunities for the community to be involved in the site's implementation, and we are currently evaluating a plan for valuable engagement. Council will receive an update on the engagement strategy in mid-2020. That concludes staff's presentation. Before we begin with questions, I'd like to provide the council members who participated in the City-County Working Group an opportunity to provide their perspective.
Great. So are there any questions? Adam?
Should we do this in advance of the working group stuff, or?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe it's worthwhile to have a few comments from the working group members. So, Bob?
Sure. Just so folks know who the working group were. Initially was Sam and I, and then after Sam took on the mayor role, Mark Wallach stepped into his position. We, as you can probably observe, we moved pretty quickly here. We only convened in November, and here we are in January with our recommendations. There's a reason for that, and that is when we sat down with Elise Jones, who represented the county, and the staff from both city and county. First of all, we set forth the respective parties' criteria, which were not misaligned. I think the county had some requirements and we had some requirements, but they were more or less overlapped. But one of the things we agreed that we would do is we would identify if there was a showstopper sooner rather than later. And so we wanted to identify those things which we thought were going to be potentially most problematic first. And we identified, as it turns out correctly, that probably the most problematic challenge was going to be parking. If we had somehow found a solution to parking, we had a lot more work to do, and there were probably a lot of other hurdles that we were going to have to get over as well, but we never got there because when we hit the wall on parking, it kind of ended our discussion pretty quickly. It wasn't through lack of trying or creativity. Chris Hagelin and other people worked really, really hard to try to figure out how you could make 400 plus 400 equal 400. but we just kept running into a math problem. The city needs about 400 parking spaces for its employees and customers. The county needed about 400 for its employees and customers. And the parking garage, even if we added a deck, was not going to accommodate more than about 400. We looked at all sorts of ways to park people in the neighborhood, TDM, transit, passes. I mean, we actually had some pretty bizarre ideas because we didn't want anybody to come back and say, boy, you didn't try hard enough, you gave up too soon. But we simply couldn't make the math work. And so we're making this recommendation to you now that we not try to accommodate the county on site. I will also just editorialize that the process was very positive. It was very constructive. I don't think the county feels badly. I think the county feels that we gave them a fair shake and we tried to do what we could to accommodate them. And now they're considering what their options are, whether they stay at Iris and Broadway or whether they look at another property. So I think that if Elise was here, she would say that was a fair, open process, and we did what we could to try to make it work. It simply wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm. I'll add to that the goal going through this was to try and find any deal killers that there could be, and this was a showstopper, and we unearthed it pretty quickly, and so it was an efficient process as well as all of that. So with that said, do we have questions for staff?
Just had a quick comment.
Sure.
As the junior member of the working group, I agree with Bob in terms of the cooperative nature of the process, and also want to emphasize this was not a close call. I mean, 400 and 400 does not equal 400, and it just wasn't a very difficult decision in light of those requirements. There was no tweak that we could have done anywhere along the line that would accommodate those needs.
Mm-hmm. Mirbai?
So are we going over questions now from the presentation? Because that's
yeah, I think so. Unless there's other comments on the county issue, I think it's time to either ask questions or make your comments.
Okay. Wasn't Adam first? I'll let you go, and then I'll jump in.
Sure. Yep.
Cool. Since this is my first bite at the Alpine Balsam apple from being on council, these are kind of broad, but are we any closer to knowing the percentage of permanently affordable housing now that we have the land use designations down?
It's a great question. We're kicking off an analysis right now that'll tell us more about what's financially feasible. We expect to know the results of that in the middle of the year. So we don't have percentages yet. The land use gives us a good idea of what density is possible, and now we're testing that against financing. So.
Okay, and this is a question I'm sure I should know, but I haven't heard along the process. How much of city staff is going to be consolidated? Like, how many buildings are we getting rid of that we don't have to occupy anymore around the city? What percentage of city staff is actually going to be located at this location?
It equates to about 4 city buildings, including Park Central and New Britain, which are directly across the creek from here. In addition to 1 city building that we currently lease, and it's an expensive lease, in addition to one of our smaller buildings. I don't know off the top of my head the percentage of city staff, but I believe it's around 350 or 400 staff consolidated.
How many city staff do we have? Do we know that right offhand?
We have about 1,450.
Okay, I can do the math on that. What's going to happen to that really, really nice fence that's been painted after the project is over?
Yeah, hopefully, we intend to keep it for several years. It'll stay throughout the duration of construction. And we haven't really decided what would happen. Do you want to answer? This is Michelle Crane, our facilities project manager. I can also answer.
Hi, good evening, Council. Michelle Crane, as Amanda said. So we have some different thoughts on what the fence could do, but one agreement we came to with the artists is that there may be opportunities to take that piece of the fence and use it on site and kind of memorialize it in different ways. So we do hope to keep using that on site. And one other just quick clarification on the number of staff. Of the staff being consolidated, there's about 600 that are spread across 22 buildings that are the ones that we're actually considering for consolidation and that can be consolidated. So what we can potentially do at Alpine Balsam is close to about at least a third to a half of our staff and administrative office buildings.
Nearby.
So a couple questions, and some might be in the weeds and some might not even be up yet, but on the western and the northern central sections that you showed on the map, when the old council was in office, we talked very seriously about wanting pitched roofs, but everything that you are showing there is square boxes as usual. So I'm wondering, and again, I get that this can be in the weeds, but it's concerning when we talked about it so in depth and we're still seeing square boxes. So are these just samples that haven't gotten changed out, or are we still considering to have more European beautiful designs versus boxes?
That's a good question as well. These are examples pulled from the area plan. The area plan includes some information about pitched roofs, and I may pull Jean Gatza up, who is our senior planner that knows more details about your question, but I think we're intending for a beautiful design, yeah.
Correct. Jean Gatza with Comprehensive Planning. Mirabai, exactly. These are just examples.
Can you pull the mic up just a little bit? Sorry, Jean.
We have a lot of work to do yet on final design, but the area plan does include prototypes that have descriptions about the feasibility and our height. The height maps will allow for the potential for that.
Perfect, thank you. And then the next thing, and this was just after speaking with a colleague on council, so now that we won't be having county staff, that means that we have that, where is it, the flux use? I heard that we're looking at like 90 units on a 1 acre lot, which is obviously not going to work for many people. I think we're going to have a lot of emails coming to us over that. So where are we on that? I mean, what are we looking at density-wise?
You want to speak to that?
Sure. So as Amanda said, the analysis that we're doing right now, the testing that we're doing on the housing side, I think that'll help flush out a little bit more of understanding what's actually feasible. And so we had put ranges in the area plan of estimating what the potential housing unit yields, but those were very much ranges and very much estimates. And so I think we can do that testing and that kind of physical analysis that we're working on now, and that'll help us understand really a little bit better of what would be realistic for that parcel where was identified as either county or housing. Now that it's going to be housing, we'll flush it out further.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Oh.
Mark, piggyback?
Yeah, go on.
I'm sorry. You want a colloquy? I'm sorry.
Do you mind if I just throw in a quick? The area plan that we adopted had the county option or had the housing option, but the housing option does give a maximum height to the buildings, right? So I mean, there are physical maximums, I think, in the area plan, and so we'll have to comply with those, and then you'll go off and analyze sort of what fits.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mark?
Have we defined what our financial objective is in terms of the sale or other disposition of the housing parcels? To some extent, how much affordable housing you build on the site is going to be a function of how much money we want to recover of our current and projected investment. So what parameters are we planning around at this point?
Kurt Fernhalber can answer that question.
Kurt Fernhalber, Director of Housing and Human Services. So I'll try to answer maybe a part of this. Others may have to jump in. So I think the analysis that Chris was talking about will look at different densities, different tenure types, and figure out what the yield could be, which will also impact the financial impact of how the site balances. And those will be presented to council, and you'll have choices that you'll be able to make. One choice would be part of the land, or the land is free to certain parts of development to get further affordable housing. The other is to sell it for X, and you'll get Y number of units for sale, and there'll be a number of factors that will be presented to you as council, which will show different financial outcomes based on different housing outcomes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anyone else? Just to remind us, the question was feedback on scope, schedule, or process, so if you may have any questions on any of those. Okay. Well, I guess that kind of wraps it up. Thank you very much for the presentation and the update. It's great that we kind of have clarity now on how we're moving forward with all of the different parcels, and look forward to hearing what your analysis shows on that 5th parcel. Thank you. Sorry?
You asked if we had questions. I didn't have any questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Throw in a comment there. I mean, we haven't quite answered your questions, but I imagine we all agree with the recommendation, so thanks for chasing that down. The one bit of feedback that I'd have, I mean, you guys are doing a great job. Thanks for all the work that you're doing. Look forward to the next iterations. Is that as you're developing those, a couple things that just be interested in hearing more about. One would be the possibility of using a form-based code as we move to subsequent phases of this project. So particularly if we're going to consider selling pieces of it, we might have a form-based code set up to help prescribe what that might look like, say, for example, with pitched roofs in beautiful European-style buildings. And then just the other one, that just making sure there's been some great ideas in the community from really multiple sources about increasing the percentage of affordable by including substantial middle-income affordable housing. So I'd love to make sure that gets in the analysis and see some analysis as the housing program develops about how that might work out.
Great. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you as a new council member for giving us that background. That was a really great presentation and introduction. So thanks for all the time and effort. Nice job.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to future updates. Okay, and I believe since we've gone through all of our call-ups, we're just down to the last item, right?
Yep. The last item is your severe weather shelter policy discussion.
So, Aaron, this is yours. Jane, did we have any staff that wanted to start us off, or should we just start off with Aaron and his thoughts?
Why don't we start off with Aaron, but Kurt is here to discuss this issue. as well, but we don't have a presentation.
Okay, great. Aaron, you want to start us off?
Well, I won't talk for a long time, but I did bring this up when we were speaking about homeless services a few weeks ago, and I probably would have asked for the council to weigh in at that time, but we had a couple of members who were absent, so I thought we should have a discussion when the full council was present. But I'm just interested in safety for our unhoused population and making sure that severe weather shelter is open kind of throughout the winter months. I'm interested in hearing from Kurt about maybe exactly what dates might work out best. So interested in getting that done. I do understand, we've talked about this before, the incremental financial cost is low, and as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, service providers, so I see in the audience, guys, that they're kind of logistically set up to provide services every night if necessary throughout these kind of coldest months. So it seems like from a practical standpoint, it's pretty doable. So if I...
And can I just ask one question before you start, Kurt? What's your proposal exactly? Is it that we stay open, severe weather shelters stay open every night between October and May?
So it's that it stays open every night during a period of time, and I'm actually looking to collaborate with Kurt here a little bit, and so about what the data shows in terms of how often the shelter's been open, and kind of look for those periods where it's pretty much open, almost all the time anyway, and because those are the coldest months. So I wanted to let Kurt talk to us a little bit about it.
And just to be clear then, Aaron, once those dates, that beginning date and end date would be established, we'll hear from Kurt here in a second. What you'd propose is on the shoulder of those dates, whatever those are, we would still use the weather triggers. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thanks for clarifying that, Bob.
Okay. Good evening again. Kurt Fernhauer, Director of Housing and Human Services. So a couple of things. Aaron asked me this question a few days ago, and I passed on some data to him. I'll just give an overview of that. So we looked back over this last year. If you remember, we changed the weather trigger in mid-year the year before. So we basically have part of one year and part of another year as a full season. So if you looked at a trigger of when is the severe weather shelter open more than half the time, if we looked at that year, that starts in this past year. That starts at about the 1st of December. We did 2-week increments, looking at the percentage of nights that it was open, and then that goes to about the first or second week in April. So again, this is 1 year, so it's hard to draw conclusions off of 1 year. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that Boho, when they ran this program years ago, they moved to this same direction that you're looking at tonight, and they went from the middle of November to the middle of March. I think from what I understand, they did that for 2 reasons. One was related to the weather and the number and percentage of nights that it's open, and also from an operational standpoint, and the ability to provide those services with the staff and operations that it takes to do so.
So if we sort of blended those two, I mean, could we work with something like a middle of November to end of March? And I looked maybe to the folks from Bridge House who are present in terms of whether that's a kind of functional approach from a logistical perspective.
Yeah, so they're under contract for severe weather shelter through the remainder of this season. And in conversations that I had with them, they said they could do operationally, they would, the easiest lift for them would be the middle of March. They couldn't, operationally, they couldn't go past the end of March.
Okay. So I'll put that out to my colleagues for discussion. Sounds like it's doable to go to the end of March. So what do folks think?
Well, would it be useful? So you said the middle of March is what you heard from Bridge House, is that right?
Yes, they can go to the end of March, and
end of March.
Operationally, the middle of March is the easiest for them, but they can go to the end of March if they couldn't go beyond the end of March.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Adam?
Process question. Is this something we can actually vote on tonight? What's the...
I believe it is.
Okay.
Jane, do you see any reason we cannot?
We can.
Okay, that's what I thought. Great. Bob?
I know we only have about 1 year's of data, but last year, what was the utilization in the second half of March? Do you happen to have that information handy?
74%.
74% of those days. It was open. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's a high percentage. So I don't want to strain Bridge House, but if you say it is functional, it is possible, that would be. If you're open 74% of the days anyway, it's our snowiest month.
And roughly speaking, what will the cost be if it's 4.5 months?
So the incremental cost from going where we are now to that is not much. Initially, I was thinking it was 30 or 40,000, but it's not that much, partly because in the beginning of the season, they weren't using it as much as we expected. So I don't think the costs, compared to what we have in the budget, the costs are not anything that would be of an impact.
Rachel?
Thanks for all of that, Kurt. My understanding from speaking with some providers and also some UN staff is that there's concern that if we open the severe weather shelter all winter, there will be maybe a decline in incentive to use coordinated entry and to sort of follow into the Housing First models. So one thought I have is, can we consider this a pilot for the rest of this year and gather some data on does that threat actually materialize? And also give us time to come back next winter maybe with any safeguards in place to make sure that we are not disincentivizing people, because I'm supportive of keeping the shelter open, but I'm also sensitive to wanting to follow data and not to encourage people to not use what's going to be healthiest.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. The other thing that we've been discussing is, at a very initial stage within our executive team is, or the county team is whether there's some sort of trigger to the housing focus shelter. So, people stay at the severe weather shelter for so many days. They've been part of our community for, 5 years. They really should be in housing focus shelter. Is there some way to put a time frame on the severe weather shelter for those as well? So that's another way that we're sort of thinking about it. But I think, looking at the data this spring would be a great opportunity to think about any policy choices for next year.
Mark, I've got, and then Bob, and then Mirabai.
I actually had other comments, but I very much like Rachel's suggestion. I think it addresses some very key points, and I would like to make that part of whatever we do tonight.
Great. Bob?
Along those lines, I know that this will be the last year that Bridge House will be providing the severe weather shelter, and you've got some options that you kind of laid out for us a few weeks ago. So I assume that as part of this analysis, this experiment, as Rachel said, to keep the shelter open during the months of January, February, and March, you'll be looking at our new severe weather shelter provider, whoever that is, and wherever that is located. And that information will be fed into that analysis as you get ready for the 2020-2021 season. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think you'll have time when we have that check-in the beginning of the third quarter of this year. That would probably be the time to look at that, because that would give us enough time during that RFP process to, define those parameters.
Great. Thank you.
Mirabai?
So not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. I remember last year when we brought this up, we voted against it, and it was because we felt that it was going to hinder or harm the process that you guys had been working on so hard to put housing first. And as Rachel put it, I think very well, I guess what's your guys' thoughts? I mean, we didn't do this last year for a reason, and I understand that it's not that many more days, and we would like to make sure these people are not in harm's way. But is this going to hurt the program? I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on this?
So, yeah, I think obviously we have concerns about it drawing more individuals to the community and us being able to have the services to support those additional individuals. However, I think there's a good communication plan that has been implemented by Bridge House over the last couple of years, talking about the capacity that we do have for programs. I think that's certainly been pretty effective. And I think the increased effort that we'll have for both diversion and navigation, and what I mean by that is additional resources that we can put towards that. And that's been very successful as well with the work of the Path to Home navigation at Bridge House. Those kind of services really need to continue. And as we make those transitions, we will really have to pay attention to how well they're working. So it's not one thing, it's a lot of things that impact that.
Great. Mary?
So in a conversation that you and I had, you mentioned to me that you had found that other communities were Ubering up people to Boulder from as far as Colorado Springs, I think you said.
Yes.
So is that something that we can keep data on, to Rachel's point about keeping data and making sure that it's not putting our Housing First program in jeopardy? So can we keep data on that? And how prevalent is that situation?
I would say it's prevalent enough to have an impact, not Colorado Springs on its own, but other communities in combination.
But it was Colorado Springs, right?
Yes. Certainly more come from Denver, but that is something that we want to start collecting data on. There was some data collected on it, but it wasn't done in a way that was, I would say, reliable in the same way that our other data is. So we do need to pay more attention to that. And we have started a process of reaching out to those places that have referred people to Boulder.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Anyone else have any comments, questions? Okay, then I'll weigh in. Last year I was in favor of raising the temperature threshold, and so this year I'm also going to support keeping severe weather shelter open all year. I believe because it's an incremental number. All winter, sorry, not all year. In the coldest months of the winter. Because I think we don't want people exposed to the threat of hypothermia and frostbite on our streets. And so that's the reason to do this. We have to be careful that it doesn't detract from the housing focused shelter work, because we placed a record number of people from homelessness into housing this year. We should celebrate that. It's not enough, but it is taking the folks who are chronically homeless in Boulder and getting them into permanent shelter, and housing is the solution to homelessness. So whatever we do with making sure that people don't become harmed on our streets through this shelter program, we need to make sure that we keep focused on the people who are long-term homeless in Boulder. We have seen from our data that there is a large contingent of folks who use this who have been here less than 6 months, and that's okay. We want to keep them from harm as well. But those folks may or may not stay on longer, and so our focus has to be on getting people into housing. That's the ultimate solution. I think we've been doing that, and so the only thing that concerns me with keeping severe weather shelter open in the coldest months of the year every day is the magnet effects. If it's real, that's a problem because it drains our resources, but more importantly, we don't want to detract from the ability to put people into housing. So that is the only thing I want the data to help guide us to make sure that we don't do. Other than that, I'm in support of what Aaron's brought forward. And so Aaron, just to put a fine point on this, we're talking about now, your proposal is now until the end of March.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, and specifically, so to keep severe weather shelter open nightly through the end of March this year, and then to incorporate in our planning for the next version of severe weather shelter next season, dates of November 15th to the end of March, subject to analysis on how it worked for the rest of this season and other ideas people have from a policy perspective to be determined later.
Great. So I want to have a few words of discussion after this, but to make sure that we close this out, I'd like to have a vote. So Aaron's proposal for this year is to keep severe weather sheltering open every night between now and the last day of March.
And then to have temperature thresholds after that.
And then, temperature thresholds as per our normal behavior until May? Yep. Okay, so that's the proposal on the table. Do you want to make a motion? Get a second?
Yeah, well, I'll move that.
Okay. Any seconds?
Second.
We have to have a hearing.
Yeah, you have. Okay.
We do have a
hearing. We have a motion. So open the public hearing.
And I'd invite, if folks from Bridge House want to come up and talk to us, please do. If you don't feel the need, that's fine too. But just.
Yeah, of course, the solution to homelessness is housing. But the problem is we're building as fast, higher, and bigger, and more expensive. Example, 311 Mapleton in this community, and we're creating inequality that has never before been seen. And yet we're having to deal with more and more unhoused people. So what's wrong with this picture? We need to balance jobs housing, and I'm glad Sam brought that up at the retreat. But we really need to take active action to balance jobs housing now, because we have to put the tourniquet on before we, can apply more housing. And it's just an endless, strive for more and more housing that we're never going to catch up with. We had to do this when we did municipalization. We had to fight Excel first. We have to stop the expansive growth of this community. Everywhere I go, I'm riding my bike through cars trapped all the way from Ideal today, all the way up to North Boulder. This community cannot handle this kind of growth. It's got to stop. Now. It's got to stop now. And you got to do something about it now.
Thank you, Lynn. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Isabel McDevitt. I'm the CEO of Bridge House. Just a couple remarks and words about what we've been up to and your decision tonight. With the continuum of services as it is, the goal is to engage people for a housing exit. And I can't stress enough that the work that we have done as a community, as a collaborative, and as individual service providers, it has been especially important because we often talk about needing more vouchers, needing more units, but I think what we've also been able to do by engaging people early and learning about their needs early through coordinated entry and with the navigation program is we've been able to be a lot more creative and solution-oriented than ever before. The night someone walks in for shelter, we should be talking about what's their exit. Shelter is not a solution unto itself. One of the things that we did see last year with severe weather shelter is that over 30% of people using severe weather shelter on a regular basis are some of our most chronic known folks who have been screened already. And so I really want to point out that there are multiple populations using severe weather shelter. It is not just people new to the community. It is also people who are otherwise pretty service resistant who use it on a case-by-case basis. We have a tremendous opportunity there, and we should be doing everything we can to be outreaching those folks in that environment. And again, balancing the need for life-saving services, whether that's meals or shelter, but also with the intent to engage people for their future and to make sure that there's movement in our system. We cannot sustain every person experiencing homelessness in a shelter model, and we can't house everyone in a tidy unit. We will only get outcomes if we continue to innovate. And I think, we've done a lot of work to try to provide structure around our continuum. The move that will take place later this spring, is further putting structure to where we can dedicate resources. But I think it is important for the entire community, not just service providers, not just city and county, but for landlords, employers, and others to look at innovative models around congregate living, around partnering with landlords who own market rate housing and, developing partnerships. Because I think that if we talk about too narrow of a strategy that's just shelter on one hand and vouchers on the other, we will lose some of the innovation that's so important to keep movement in our system. Thank you.
Aaron, hang on, Isabel, please. Thank you. Aaron has a question.
I just wanted to thank you for those points and the continued partnership and all the work that you do in the community, and for your flexibility on this question.
Yeah.
And Mary?
Isabel? So you mentioned that 30% of the people that use the severe weather shelter have already been brought into the system, so brought in through coordinated entry. And that those folks are very service resistant. And you also mentioned that what we need to be doing is to be focusing on doing outreach to those individuals. Does the proposal that we have on the table tonight deflect from helping those individuals?
Well, I think the challenge that we've always faced with severe weather shelter, which the stated purpose is to save lives, right? And then the continuum of services, starting with coordinated entry, is really designed to get people, engaged with services. There's always been a bit of a disconnect. What I'm trying to say is that I think we need to acknowledge that some people are not going to be able to access some of the more traditional services, so they might be more comfortable in a severe weather shelter environment. And we need to be okay with that and still try to get to know them, especially if they're the most chronic in our community, and try to continue to help them with a long-term housing outcome, and essentially maybe leapfrog the need to stay in housing-focused shelter or Path to Home or a program that they're not comfortable with. And so I just think it's important to note that while we had the aspirations initially that, severe weather shelter was then you'd go to coordinated entry and then you'd be on your way, that truly hasn't happened. And, I think it's just because the programs and the intent of the programs hasn't been the same. So I just encourage us to continually look at new and creative ways to engage people where they are in a trauma-informed way.
Great. And I just want to clarify, when you say, that just hasn't happened, that hasn't happened, from coordinated entry through a voucher exit. That hasn't happened for some of the service-resistant people. Is that what you mean?
It's happened for some. You mentioned a record-setting year. The shelter did have a record-setting year. Path to Home also placed 344 people into housing, non-voucher housing, mostly, self-resolving in terms of finding family members, market rate housing, other transitional living. But I think the idea of moving folks into housing, we can do it, but we won't be able to meet the needs of everyone unless we're listening to what they're telling us their needs are. And I think there is a group of people, and the HOT team will tell you, the municipal court will tell you, that we haven't quite identified really what the right fit is going to be. And I think we just have to keep pushing ourselves to continue to do that.
Great, that's excellent. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Isabel. Okay, so James, yes?
James Feeney, North Boulder. At the retreat last weekend, I noticed that the police chief raised the concern that a lot of the sweeps that they were doing involved people that he described as people with mental health issues and people with severe drug addiction issues. And there was no actual follow-up conversation on those topics. So I'm just curious if there is, even though this is not a component of the motion on the table, some way of dealing with those particular issues, the mental health and people with drug addictions, that doesn't involve just dumping this on the police. And so I don't know what happens here in Boulder with those conversations. I'm under the impression that the federal government has become less involved in providing mental health services and drug treatment. And so I'm just very curious if anybody can speak to how those issues are dealt with. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else for public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring this back to council. As I said, I think there can be a few words after this. I was going to go ahead and, if it's okay with council, go ahead and resolve the motion on the table, and then we can have a few more minutes of conversation afterwards. Mark, do you have a comment?
Forgive me. The motion on the table is for this year to be analyzed again on the basis of the data that we obtained, correct?
Correct. We'll revisit next year. I think the hard motion on the table is for this year. The soft proposal is that next year it would be November 15th to the end of March.
Yeah, pending further discussion.
Pending further.
But asking staff to kind of take that into account as they look for the contracts for next season, but with additional conversation later this year.
Okay.
So yeah, the motion on the table that we'll vote on tonight and that will be binding will be to keep severe weather shelter open every night between now and the end of March. Okay. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. So it's unanimous and the motion carries, and so we will keep severe weather shelter open until March 31st. Thank you, Aaron, for bringing it forward. And we look forward to the data, and thank you for being accommodating to the request, Kurt. Thank you, Isabel, for coming out and for helping us operate the shelter. So appreciate it very much. Okay, so I've got a few, I'm just going to set what I think we came away from the retreat with and make sure we say it again and we make sure that everyone's head nods, that we're all in agreement on this. There were some other services proposed. For example, a campground where people could set up tents, a parking area where people could park and stay in their vehicles overnight. There are others. And we agreed that we would have a study session at which we would collect these ideas together, bounce them off of Kurt, and perhaps, if it's the will of council, surface the one or two for analysis that come to the top. Is that what we agreed on at the retreat? If it was something else, please tell me. I'm seeing mostly nods. Quizzical look from Rachel.
I guess I'm still a little bit confused about the picking the one or two that surface to the top rather than trying something more holistic. But Adam's nodding along with that. I just want to point out, if I can get a quizzical look, I'm calling him out for a nod.
We can have any discussion we want in April. I think doing half a dozen things might be difficult. That's all. But we can have that conversation if we want to try a half dozen.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we have the whole conversation, that we're not immediately pegging ourselves to one or two. We want to look at the broad spectrum of things first.
No, in my opinion, this is more dialogue between council and Kurt.
And also, I think that Mr. Feeney raised a good point about mental health and addiction, so hope that will be a big part of the conversation as well.
Okay. And then following that, there's going to be a discussion in Q3, and that discussion in Q3 is going to be, I think, mostly to set us up for the coming season, and then to discuss feedback on the ideas that are brought forward in the April study session. Kurt seems to be nodding, so that's setting us up for a couple different steps to be able to flesh out the things that go beyond the severe weather shelter for this year. And so with that said, I guess I would invite council to see if there's anything else that you want to say about this tonight, because then it's going to go into kind of a lull as far as council's concerned until April. So this is your chance to add to it. Adam?
Yeah, I just wanted to reassert that this is very much what we did tonight is just the floor of things that need doing, that this is a very broad and deep issue, and it's going to take a very, very comprehensive set of different things to address it in the way that it needs to be addressed. And this is very, very, very just the beginning.
Well, I would say it's just a continuation of lots of...
Absolutely. We've had plenty of services in the past, but as far as looking more comprehensively at things where it's just not housing is the permanent solution.
Okay. Anyone else? Aaron?
Well, it would be great if staff can do some initial analysis on some of the ideas that were talked about ahead of that April study session. So if that's doable, Kurt. So, because I know Adam and Rachel put together a few thoughts, and we can bring additional thoughts. We can have a discussion, but it'd be great to get some initial information at that point, not start from zero at that
Rachel?
On that study session.
I didn't mean to rush you. I wanted to thank Aaron for making this motion and bringing this up again this year as well as last year. Thank you. And obviously it is our number one duty, I think, to protect lives and focus on health and safety. So I think this was a good step today. And I think I walked away from the retreat a little bit confused. Sorry to bring up another quagmire, but about the tent encampments and our direction. I had asked a question that didn't get answered, I think, by the interim police chief, which was what happens to the people after we ticket and remove the tents. I understand now we've got severe weather shelter open for this year, but it's going to be an issue again when severe weather closes. And I think when we haven't looked at the holistic options and don't have them in place, I wanted to make it clear I did not vote yes for that. So I still don't know what happens to people when we are going to be moving people along. So I don't know if there's a question, but.
Is that a question to someone?
Because he's not here, so just that I have concerns that people who are camping in tents, and I completely understand the community concerns, and I'm not saying those are invalid, but we haven't given another option, especially after March 15th, if it's 39 degrees out. So 37 degrees, I forget the temperatures. Anyhow, just I think that that's still a looming question, and I have concerns about it. And again, I think people who are camping out are there because, well, for a host of reasons. So I just don't want to not perform our number one duty of health.
So Kurt is going to come up and address that. And while he's coming up, I'm going to say that the police chief doesn't know what happens to those folks, of course. And so we will try to have a host of social services available for people. And as we indicated at the retreat, we would spend extra time before removing the encampments to provide them many opportunities to interact with social service providers. But Kurt, you may supplement my answer, please.
Yeah, so I think Jane almost nailed it. So the other thing that's when we present to City Council on subjects like homelessness, we don't cover everything. We cover the things that we think are going to be most important. The other thing that's worth noting is that over this past year, we've engaged significantly in a way that we haven't before between the system and with Mental Health Partners. Mental Health Partners is a really important organization and service for our community, and it's important for them both to be effective as well as be integrated in the work that we do. We're continuing to make progress around mental health, but we have a long ways to go. That also directly interfaces with drug abuse as well. We have also engaged more with health services. Boulder Community Health has gotten more involved in homeless solutions over the past year. They have partnered with Bridge House as well as with the shelter, bringing health services to people. Any process that would come prior to the police chief's work with the encampments would have a lot of interactions around these services. As you already know, I think the HOT team does a lot of this already. So obviously a more intensive approach will be required as well. We do have more services that need to be expanded to meet the needs of the homeless. We're not there yet. But I think a holistic approach, as Aaron had talked about, or Adam had talked about, has to be part of all the work that we do as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I have a quick question, Kurt. The early detection Get Engaged, the EDGE team, where do they fit into the picture that you just described?
Yeah, so they're much broader than the HOT team, and they would be called out to all sorts of different interactions that the police would have with residents. So the majority of them would actually be for people who are housed.
And to clarify, that's the team that's trained in mental health issues.
That's correct.
Right? That works with the police to deal with folks who have mental health issues on police calls.
That's correct. So that's supporting the entire community. Yep.
So Junie, then Adam.
So my question is to you or to the rest of my colleagues here. So the severe weather shelter will be open all day, right?
No, just in the evenings.
Just in the evenings until March 31st?
The end of March, yeah. Severe Weather Shelter is a nighttime only program.
Okay, but I thought you mentioned we were discussing it being open. No, not during the daytime.
It's only open during the day when city offices are closed.
Meaning the big
holidays, yeah. Yeah, holidays and when the weather would shut down the offices, yeah.
So, okay, it will be open. We're not considering the weather threshold. We're not considering the 32 degrees anymore. So it's going to be open, right? Until March 31st.
Not during the day.
Yes. So my question to you is what happened after March 31st, right? Because I understand it will be open, then the weather seems fine right now, right? It's between 40 degrees, 50 degrees. So it will be open, that's great. But March 31st, let's say in April 1st, what's going to happen then?
You mean if there's a storm that closes city offices, or?
Yes, or assume that, let's say the weather is 40 degrees, what will happen? So my point is, since it's going to be open now until the 31st, after the 31st, what happens?
So after the 31st, the rules that we have in place today, which have certain weather and temperature guidelines, will be in effect from April 1st to April 30th, I think.
Or May 30th.
May 30th.
Okay, that is a bit confusing, right?
So Junie, I think your mic's off.
That's a bit confusing to me because if we're trying to make progress, why does progress ends on March 31st?
Bridge House can't actually accommodate anyone more than on a weather threshold basis after the 31st. That was what we discussed right at the beginning.
And that it will warm up. So, I mean, once you're into May, most of the time, temperatures are not life-threatening. And if they are, the shelter will be open.
Sam, I had one more question for Kurt.
Go ahead.
I saw an email that said our point in time count is coming up on the 27th. I just
Yes.
wanted to verify that that's accurate.
That's correct.
Okay. Are there any preparations we should know about for that?
There's lots of preparations that have taken place for that, yes.
Okay. Anything we should know about, just since?
Not that I'm,
Okay.
Okay, I think, other questions for Kurt? Okay, thank you, Kurt. I guess I'll make one comment to your point about, what happens. The severe weather shelter is not like in a vacuum, right? It's at the 30th Street facility, and in conversations I've had with people at the Bridge House, they definitely make an attempt to engage as people are packing up to go out for the day and grabbing food and so on. There's always an invitation to come in to coordinated entry or navigation services. So there's another advantage to having those things co-located is there is an attempt to engage. You can't force people to do whatever they don't want to do, but that at least is one more opportunity every time that they do go into severe weather shelter. So I think we need to keep that in mind as we think about how it's going to function next year, because that opportunity to engage is something I think we want to keep alive. Okay, I think we've kind of covered a broad outline, and we've got kind of our steps going forward, both in the short term and then for the next few quarters. Any closing comments on homelessness and services?
Well, I just wanted to thank council members for working with me on this proposal and for the collaboration. And thanks to everybody on the dais, and a huge thank you to Bridge House and our other service partners who implement,
as well as
community.
Kurt and our homeless services
Absolutely.
Group and our housing group. So thank you all. Okay, so if we're done with that, I think all we've got left is a debrief. Anyone have comments on the meeting?
Sam, I actually saw something that was just in the additional materials about radon awareness.
Radon?
Yeah. Just since we didn't say anything tonight about it, I think it's worth saying, if you don't have a radon detector and you live in Colorado, you should have one and get that checked out immediately. And it is hard to mitigate in multifamily units because they're multifamily units. So make sure you open your windows if you live in a multifamily unit. That's actually what I have to do every night. So
yeah, well, test for radon. I mean, that's what that radon awareness thing was. It comes up every year because Colorado has one of the highest prevalences of radon in homes of any state in the country because of our hard rock geology. So that's great. Thank you, Adam, for that. Anyone else? Anything else? Okay, great. With that, we're adjourned at 9:17.
13 minutes early.
Live from Paris, on France 24.